committee meeting in the City of Lloydminster to order on Monday, September 17th. At this time, we will take a silent moment of personal reflection. As a reminder, all members of council are obligated to declare a conflict of interest or pecuniary interest as per section 133 of the Lloydminster Charter regarding any item on this agenda. This meeting is for discussion and information gathering only. All decisions will occur during council meetings. We thank all of our presenters at this time for their time. Moving to agenda item number 2. Approval of agenda. I'll look for direction from council. Councilor Buckingham.
The agenda dated September 17, 2018 be approved.
Seconder, Councilor Thorson. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. Councilor Buckingham.
The Governance and Priority Committee minutes dated August 13, 2018 be approved.
Seconder, Councilor Thorson. Any further comments or questions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the item number 4, public presentations. I would ask those speaking for Lakeland to please come forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, and members of the City Council. I want to thank you very much for having Lakeland College here today to present on behalf of the electronic sign request to amend Land Use Bylaw 5-2016. So you can see from the mock-up that we have here of our proposed sign. The sign would be between the path where the trees line and the fire hall. In a slide further on, I'll actually go over the design. So students at Lakeland College experience what's called the Lakeland Advantage. That is the opportunity to live the learning with a student-managed enterprise, or what we call SME. It aligns squarely with our mandate at the college and in our strategic plan. Business students at Lakeland will experience their SME by managing the operation of the sign, advertising, sales, and design of those ads once the sign is operational. This gives them the opportunity to hone their entrepreneurial skills. This is much like our agriculture students that we currently have on our Vermilion campus, who utilize the farm as their student-managed enterprise. It's our responsibility at Lakeland College as a community college to serve our community. We recognize that, and in recognizing that, we've dedicated 25% of the advertising of this sign to go towards internal events and promotions. That will focus on the awareness of what we have going on in the campus, such as open house, the wrestler games, the President's Gala, information sessions, deadlines, and events that are happening within the campus. So for the design, I'll just talk a little bit about what we were thinking is going to be the direction of what we would like to see the sign looking like, which is comparable to the current e-sign that is outside of the Service Sports Center, both in design but also in size as well. It'll be one-sided facing College Drive, and the design will be tasteful and complementary to the current campus. It'll host the latest in technology and LED screen design. Lakeland College recognizes that there are residential homes located nearby, and to create as little disruption as possible to those residents, we would have the sign operational from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. Doing our research, we formed a committee. That committee was composed to approach community businesses in an effort to gain their support. And in doing so, community supporters have committed up to $20,000 to the project. And as a part of our business plan, we will have policies and procedures in place to guide our advertising sales. Any questions?
I guess the one question I have, if I can start out, is that going to be located then as you're making the curve in College Drive, that the sign will be to the right or left? It'll be in the curve, it's not at front end when you're going into it or coming out?
So the sign will be actually located, if you can envision the front of the campus. There is a walking path with a line of trees.
Okay.
There's a bit of a knoll, and then there's the fire hall.
Right.
The sign will be located facing the direction to College Drive.
Right.
So if you stand on the knoll, the vehicles are actually coming from the fire hall.
Okay.
And also coming around the curve,
Yeah, so,
but at the stop sign as well.
okay. So yeah, you'll be in the curve is where I'm
It'll
trying to...
be in the curve,
right,
yes.
Okay. Because the walking path you're referring to is the one that leads to the crosswalk, both across College Drive and I think it's 59th, if my numbers are right, and that's the walking path. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But it'll be set back
Okay.
because of the engineering of the land. We're unable to put it too close to the road.
Okay.
So it'll be set back closer to the parking lot at the college.
Okay. And in your application, have you had conversations with engineering about potential further development at that intersection?
Yes, Natasha has connected us. They have been at the meetings, so we've had about 3 meetings thus far, and they have been present at those meetings. So they're trying to accommodate not only what's in the bylaw, but also future development, so that we're not going to put a sign up and then have to take it down.
Absolutely. On both sides, it would not be in our best interest.
No.
Okay. And I guess the last one I had was regarding the advertisers and commercial applications, I guess. So have you potentially sold space or to people for that $20,000 already, potential advertisers? Is that really what you were saying in that?
Yes, no contracts have been signed, but we have approached several businesses in Lloydminster to make sure that we actually have interest in something like this that is an investment in the college. So that was actually part of our approval within the college, and our Board of Governors and our executive is that we had interest within our community to make sure that we had that the advertising sales in place before we went ahead and put the sign up.
Councilor Monroe.
Do you have potential like height for it? Just because the One Bay Service Sports Center is quite tall. Is this, but in the picture it doesn't look like it's going to be quite that. The screen is going to be the same size, but is it going to be that same height?
I believe that when we look at the service center one, that's what we would like to see. We envision that height. However, it will depend on when we put, if we gain approval and we put that RFP out, then we'll actually discuss size at that point in time, because we also don't want to obstruct the front of the college.
Right, and also just, I don't want to obstruct drivers, right, for safety reasons in that corner.
Distract.
It's already potentially a high-risk corner within the community, so by having that electronic sign, I just worry about drivers being distracted as well in that location, so.
Any other questions?
So the major hurdle is that because you're going to advertise on the sign, that's the piece that has to be adjusted in the bylaw.
That is correct, yes. It's set far enough back from residential that it's not so much of the distraction within the area as it is the advertising sales.
sorry, is that going to be close to really, we already have that portable sign? Is it in that same vicinity?
So
Do you know which portable sign I'm talking about?
that's the magnetic sign that's out front.
Yeah,
So
so
if
have big
you see
Juba
the,
sales on there.
right, so if you see the fire hall, the sales, if you go back, probably another 20 feet
Okay,
from that location.
okay,
So again, it's closer to the parking lot
great.
than it is actually to the road.
Okay.
Right.
This picture's just a little deceiving.
Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Richard. Maybe not something you can even, say. Wondering if you had talked partnership with the Big Juba as a potential client of this. It seems like a natural fit to have their events kind of hosted there as well.
Yes, absolutely. They were one of our first community supporters. Yes. So we have had discussions with the Big Juba. There won't be a partnership per se. It'll be advertising sales, but there is a commitment there.
Anyone else have any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for coming before our committee today to provide some information.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So before I call up our next speaker, we're going to just remind everyone, I would ask that we save any questions till the end. I didn't announce that first, but if you have any questions for our presentations, we can allow them to make a presentation, make notes on the questions, and then we'll deal with them at that time. So at this time, I would like to ask representatives of the Lloydminster Agricultural Exhibition Association to please come up to the mic. Looks like it's going to be Mike. Welcome, gentlemen, and members of the Board of Directors of the Exhibition Association and staff.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, council members. My name is Shane Tingley. I'm the president of the Lloydminster Agricultural Exhibition Association, and we're excited to be here to do a proposal. I'm going to introduce Mike Sidoric, our general manager, who's put much time into this, so thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Shane. Welcome, Mike.
Your Worship, City Councilors, Administration, Media, and General Public. My name is Mike Sidoric. I'm the General Manager of the Lloydminster Agricultural Exhibition Association, and on behalf of the Board of Directors, we'd like to present to Council a formal proposal to purchase from the City of Lloydminster property north of our exhibition grounds, commonly referred to the City Shop Yard, plus some adjoining lands, which contain the following three segments. The area called the former City Shop Yard, 11.7 acres, plus the area directly north and east of the former City Shop Yard, including the 57th Street right-of-way, equaling 13.84 acres, indicated in red on the map. The total acreage is 25.54 acres. The association currently holds a 99-year lease on the 27 acres immediately north of our property. We are also requesting a portion of this lease land, as is and whereas, to be deeded to the association in the agreement totaling 25.54 acres, indicated in yellow on the map. This agreement, along with our association providing support for the remediation work needed of the former City Shop lands and adjoining properties. Total acreage 51.08 acres. This agreement is conditional to the association's successful bid for the CFEP Large Stream Funding Matching Grant with a value of $1 million, which is due October 1st, 2018. Let me explain a little of the background. Who we are. The Lloydminster, the association, is a long-standing non-profit organization deeply rooted in the economic and social fabric for our community. The first fair was held in 1903. The first Registered Ag Society was started in 1905 on the Saskatchewan side, and the Alberta side was in 1906. Both were amalgamated into one duly registered Ag Society during World War I. The association is the only registered Ag Society in Canada that is registered in 2 provinces. The association's property is solely owned by the Lloydminster Agricultural Exhibition Association membership. We deliver a wide variety of programming to to Lloydminster and surrounding areas that has a major economic and cultural influence. Our association is owned and operated by our membership. We are governed by a 24-member board of directors, all volunteers, made up of residents of Lloydminster and surrounding areas. The association employs 150 people annually, with 30 positions being full-time. We could not provide all the programming that we do without our dedicated volunteers. We have 1,224 volunteers who generously donate a minimum of 28,000 hours per year. What we do. Our association strives to enhance the business, education, and experience of both urban and rural residents. We work hard to deliver and support a minimum of 800 event days annually. We see well over 300,000 visitors from local, provincial, national, and international communities attending our events and activities. Our facility hosts 13 rentable rooms from 400 square feet to 45,000 square feet, with a 3,000-seat grandstand, camping facility, outdoor arenas, and more. Our present facilities allow us to accommodate meetings, conventions, trade show, livestock activities, industry, business, and social events from 10,000 to 40,000 participants. The association develops and promotes prominent agriculture events such as the Pride of the Prairies Bull Show and Sale, which is going into its 100th year. The Stockade Roundup Purebred Cattle Show, celebrating 40 years this fall, and many more. We are very proud of the significant youth leadership activities we present for our Lloydminster and surrounding communities' youth. These include 4-H Expo, Farm Safety Day, Ag Education Day, which are attended by 300 to 1,500 students and young community leaders from our entire region. Our major events that help bridge the urban-rural communities include Colonial Days Fair, Showcase, CPCA Chuck Wagon Finals, and Harvest Festival, to name a few, as well as we provide venues and opportunities for almost anything the community can dream of, from fundraising galas to concerts and more. Many of our activities are only possible with support from our provincial governments, which recognize having a healthy agriculture society is important to all communities. Some municipalities and our cities contribute annual funding to their local exhibitions and ag societies. Our association is proud to say that we have never asked for such financial support from the city. We are most appreciative of all the support we have received and provided over the years from the City of Lloydminster in joint land usage, including joint ventures such as Hockey Day in Canada, Alberta and Saskatchewan Summer and Winter Games, Bordering on Disaster Conference, the Indigenous Economic Impact Summit, along with logistical cooperation to continue to empower the city and surrounding communities. Pardon me. What led to this? Over the years, Lloydminster has grown, and our association has grown as well. It is doubtful that 50 years ago anyone would have envisioned the facilities we have today for the benefit of our community. We are not done yet. Our dedicated volunteer board of directors has plans for the future, both in short, medium, and long term, and are acutely aware of an impending danger, namely becoming landlocked, or in other words, surrounded by other developments, thereby restricting any possible future growth. Approximately 18 months ago, city administration inquired if we'd be interested in the former city property, as it was going to be put up for sale. Being as we have an annual lease on a small parcel along 49th and a long-term 99-year lease on the larger former airport property, which adjoins the former city shop area, makes the logical step to add to our land base. Our association has had a long-standing positive relationship with the City of Lloydminster and City Council, in which we supported the need of each of our organizations to prosper and develop properties to mutually benefit this community, dating back many, many years, with the most recent being back in 1984, where we had given land to support the parking lot of the Communiplex, provided access for parking for the Civic Center, and a portion to redevelop the roadway to the cemetery. This in turn helped us with redevelopment of our racetrack, which now hosts the big Chuck Wagon Finals, and it soon enabled us to obtain a 99-year lease of 27 acres to the north of our property, known as the former airport. This proved to be visionary on both council's part and our board, because between 1984 and 2011, Our continued expansion has taken up more of our deeded property and encroached onto the leased land. As of now, we have limited amount of deeded land to facilitate future expansions and maintain adequate parking. Our proposed acquisition of the former city shop property and adjoining lands and the deeding of the lease land would enable present and future generations to expand our facilities to meet the ever-expanding needs of Lloydminster and area. If we are successful, we would be able to, in a short term, utilize the existing facilities on the former city shop property to enhance our dry storage and equipment repair. This would enable us to dispose of the old airport hangars on the leased land we currently use, which are in dire need of demolition. This would allow us to restructure our camping area, provide more effective and safer large vehicle parking and regular parking, which at certain events is at capacity, as well as do some improved landscaping, thereby enhancing the aesthetics of our grounds. In the medium term, we would be able to tweak our future plans by rearranging horse rings, barns, etc., to allow future development in an orderly and most cost-effective manner, as cost-effective manner as possible. In the long term, we can see a large 40,000 square foot commerce trade facility to host larger trade shows, concerts, events, meetings to support the industry. As you see, we are planning for the future to secure economic benefits for the region, community, and for the city. Our plan. This total project is valued at $2.3 million to acquire the 51.08 acres. Our association is in the planning stages of applying for a CFEP large stream grant through the government of Alberta. This is a 50-50 match grant to a maximum of $1 million, which, when approved, will be paid to the city of Lloydminster. The matching portion of the grant will be the 99-year lease land converted to a deeded property, plus the additional portions of the land, i.e. the 57th Street right-of-way, and the other portions to square up the property to a value of $1,145,000. The association will further return 5.81 acres of the lease land as is where is, valued at $154,913 to the city. Additionally, the association will commit to contribute a 50-50 share in the remediation to a maximum of the city yard of a maximum of $150,000, which is estimated at $300,000. Any charge over $300,000 of the total project cost will be the responsibility of the city. Our portion of the cost will be paid back to the city with terms over time. Our association will support the remediation needs by managing the cleanup, utilizing our supporting partners to clean up the area at a as cost effectively as possible. In summary, the association is providing a $1 million grant for our contribution, plus return of 5.81 acres as is where is at a value of $154,913 to the project, plus our cash contribution towards remediation cost for the former city yard and added lands with a 50-50 share to a maximum of $150,000. Our investment is $1.145,913 to the project, plus the $150,000 towards remediation. The city is providing the lease land as is where is deeded to the association as part of their contribution at no cash value, strictly land allocation value of $1,145,000. We have had numerous discussions with city administration and council to discuss how this proposal will work. Administration is to be commended for bringing forth a very common sense proposal that would fulfill their needs and ours. The entire property should be squared off and extended to the north to include our present leased areas, all of the city shop property, plus some additional acres to square up the area. That's totally shown in the red on the map. They also indicated closing the existing 57th Street right-of-way allowance and including it in the area would make our future expansion easier, all encompassed under one deed title for a total of 51.18 acres. The association also recognized that property will transfer for the sole use of the Lloydminster Agricultural Exhibition Association in its future endeavors. Reassured the association is committed to providing a social, economic, and cultural benefit to Lloydminster and surrounding area residents. We are anticipating that our grant application will be successful. We have letters of support coming from Lloydminster Public School Division, Lloydminster Catholic School Division, County Vermilion River, Lloydminster Chamber of Commerce, Startup Lloydminster, MLA Dr. Richard Starkey, and the Alberta Association of Agriculture Societies. In 2014, we had commissioned an economic impact study where our data shows that our activities generate more than $47 million of economic activity annually, as well as significant contributions to the agricultural, cultural, sports, leadership development, and youth within our community. This economic impact study was commissioned by our association, which was part of a larger study between us and 6 other regional fairs in Alberta. This economic impact study was information and data that was compiled from an extensive questionnaire designed by Richard Hudson, CMC. This economic impact study supports that we truly are economic drivers for Lloydminster and surrounding region. In summation, I would like to state publicly and emphatically that this proposal is not looking for $1 million in cash from the City of Lloydminster. The proposal is to pay the City approximately with market value for the City sharpened land plus the additional properties by way of $1 million positive cash flow to the City. Plus, we relinquish our interest in the 5.81 acres of our long-term lease valued at $154,913. In addition, we are willing to contribute 50% cost of remediation of the former City shopyard adjoining properties to a maximum of $150,000, which normally would be the cost of the seller. This shows total value the City of $1,154,913 plus remediation plus support of $150,000. Our association believes our proposal to purchase is indeed in the best interest of all Lloydminster and region's current and future residents, and we sincerely hope today's council will agree. I would be more than willing to answer some questions that you may have, and thank you once again for your time. Respectfully submitted on behalf of the Lloydminster Exhibition Board of Directors, myself, Michael Stewart.
Thank you, Mike. Council, any questions for the exhibition? Councilman,
Just for the public to be aware, how many years are left in that long-term lease?
I believe 66, 63, sorry.
And what do you currently pay for an annual lease for that land?
That land was leased was for $1, but I fall back to the conversation we had in a document where we had worked extensively together to support some land needed for the Communiplex. We traded land back and forth. We provided clean access to the Civic Center to park their cars where there is no parking accessible from our property, as well as in development of the road to the cemetery. In turn, that negotiation supported the fact that we needed to upgrade our racetrack, but also it supported us to obtain the 27-acre lease at the north end of our grounds, which tied in and made a whole lot of sense to everybody back in 1984. So there's a lot of give and take in there. It's not just all one-sided and one go.
No, absolutely. So basically for the next 63 years, if we chose not to move forward with this purchase, 63 years we would be receiving $63 out of the situation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Now we will get $1 million. We hope. As long as that grant comes through. It's all, as I say, it's all contingent on the grant, right?
Right, no, absolutely. I just want the residents of our community to realize that for 63 years, all we would be getting in revenue is $63.
Correct.
Should we choose not to move forward with this proposal.
Correct.
And also just with the economic benefit for our area, how did they come to fruition of that exact number? Is that dollars?
Richard Manicon, Richard used to be from Manicon, sorry, I don't remember the last name of the company, but he's done a multitude of economic impact studies for us where he provides us with a very significant questionnaire that includes our financial statements, our eventing statements, and our eventing contracts, and all the activities that we do, and he extrapolates from that the tourism impact, your GDPs, and all of the components that go with that whole study, which accumulates to the 47 million. It's actually a little larger than that. I just used a round number, 47.
Right, and so that's money coming right back into our community.
That imports really supports your tourism.
Yeah.
It's any construction we would have done in that year, in 2014 is when that study was done. Operations contributes about 8.153 into the gross output. Construction was 336. Visitor spending was 34 million, 589,000. Local attendee spending was 3,989,000. And that contracts to a $47 million, $69,192 impact to our GDP for our region.
That's what I was
huge.
looking for, was that breakdown. So thank
Yeah.
you.
And I did provide this document to Dion, so if you do wish to peruse the 36-page document, by all means.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Don't want you to take this the wrong way at all, because it's kind of a leading question in a way. But is the lease right now in the same vein as Councilor Monroe's question? Is it severable to the city and at any time?
I believe most contracts all have several, so you can sever those. They definitely can be with just cause and just reason.
Okay. I think I had different information. It was leading for a reason, because I was under the impression the answer was we cannot sever the lease.
I'll let the city manager if I
I understand correctly on that.
Yeah, very difficult for us to get out of the lease we want to unless the Exhibition Association defaulted or become bankrupt, or those, and then the land revert back to the city.
Okay. Now I'm going to explain why I said that. It's in the same vein as what Councilor Monroe was saying, is we're going to get $63 for this, and really we're not talking about, from my understanding of it, a good portion of the land that's currently the leased land isn't really access to the city as it is now, right now anyway. So we're talking more so about the additional lease. The only difference is, in the scenario where you have deed to the land, you're able to do more with it.
That's correct. So if we go to start developing, or we need to get some funding support to develop these added facilities, if it's in a deeded position, it provides us that much more leverage when we go to do that. As we all know, funding is becoming tighter and tighter to get. We may have to rely on more financing of opportunities and operations to do that. This gives us a little bit more of a leading ability to do that.
So then, if I'm understanding correctly, this is saying we have the asset base to borrow against if we want to go and build a facility that has 40,000 square feet in the long term.
In the long term, that potentially could be where we need to go. As we all hope, we can obtain significant funding from our government
Right.
to
Absolutely.
support our industries.
Okay, but whether you have the deed or not precludes you from being able to do any of those other activities later on. Building on leased land is generally something that is difficult to do in general.
It is in general difficult. We would have to seek significant more different types of approvals from council to rebuild on that land. Everybody has to be in favor. It just adds a lot more future work and potential work longevity down the road.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and that's what I'm trying to, because I understand these things, and we've had the opportunity to, understand this project a little bit up to this point. But the public, in a way, has never seen this before, maybe needs to understand that.
In recent years, anyways.
Well, yeah, but we, without a deed, is a significant difference in terms of your ability to grow, regardless of being landlocked or not landlocked, because that's a very important part of it, maybe the most important. But on top of that is whether or not there's ownership, is whether you have the asset base to actually finance any future expansion and growth as well.
It definitely helps, because our existing property is deeded to our association now, and it would be that much more advantageous for us if we could add another 51 acres to our existing land base, which gives us that much more ability to continue to expand far into the future. And I want to go back to when our forefathers thought, well, we got this land, let's start doing some stuff on it. Well, look what we've grown to now. And what we don't want to do is stifle our future generations to be able to move forward as well as get. And I think our partnership we've had with the city has really proven the fact that everybody sees that benefit going down farther into the future, where we are an asset to this community, and we continue to be growing to be a larger asset, which a lot of our signature events, and we talk about our eventing footprint. We're doing that now for this city. And we're doing it really solely on the benefit of how we operate and the funding we get to operate our events. But a lot of our signature events are putting us on the map now. And that to me is huge. And we envision to be able to do that even further down the road for our future generations, because that's very key.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you.
Does that help? Yep, yeah, thank you. Okay.
Gentlemen, thanks for the presentation. It excites me that the foresight that's going into this from you guys. I think for conversation purposes, we talked short-term, medium-term, long-term growth in the presentation. Are there, in your mind, are there dates behind that? If you were to do it in a perfect world.
In a perfect world, I'd love to be starting those projects tomorrow. And we feel we are actually in a need of doing those projects sooner than later. But what it comes down to is the ability to finance projects. What it comes down to is the ability to obtain funding. We continually are working towards obtaining funding to do our major construction expansion phases. And I think if, long and short, we do it immediately, but I would say in 5 years, a lot can change in 3 to 5 years as we see our economy starting to somewhat come back, and hopefully we'll see some improvements, that we'll see some more granting for this type of facility operation coming back out by the 2 provincial governments as well as the federal. As soon as that happens, then we'll start seriously looking into doing some applications and applying for that. Part of this is once we're safe and secure with this proposal, then we can safely continue with our long-range plan of how to develop all the property together, which makes sense. Until we know we have it, it's very difficult to continue that long-range plan. So it's kind of the chicken and the egg, right?
Well, I just wondered if, I mean, in the crystal ball world, seeing that 40,000 square foot center there will be phenomenal. When can we support it? You know, how far out? And if the board had any vision around that, if the vision is to have a 40,000 square foot facility there, they must have some kind of vision as to when they think they might be able to.
Well, it's probably in our shorter and long term, but I don't want to commit and say we're going to do this in the next 3 years, because I think that's false. If we will do this as rapidly as we can, as soon as we can secure some significant funding. To do a 40,000 square foot trade commerce facility that's going to have a high enough trim height on the interior to suffice what the growing needs are, is going to be a $15 to $20 million investment. And that's significant.
Yeah, so 15 to 20 probably low. Right?
Well, yeah, it probably is. So, you know, that takes a lot of funding, it takes a lot of support. You know, we're also talking about improving our grandstand, which is much needed as well. We also recognize the fact that we have a significant need to develop a new, strong equine program facility as well, because our geographical location, in all fairness, for the trade commerce, the grandstand, and the equine facility, for us immediately between Edmonton and Saskatoon, makes the most logical sense for us to enhance those 3 operations. Now we're talking 60 mil probably. So, you know, but that's some of our envisions that where we know we need to go, and the sooner we can start applying for funding in operations, and then we can continue moving forward. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, just a bit for the public. I mean, you have had this discussion a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to bring it out there, so thank you.
I guess just to add to that, that's all part of our master plan. We as a board, do have a master plan. Of course, we see the need for all these different items that we're speaking of. Of course, the economy hasn't really went well to that at this date, but in the future, we see that coming. I know there's probably the opportunity to have shovel-ready projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we've talked about that, but of course,
that comes at a huge cost as well.
Our number one first priority would be the land.
No, that's
definitely.
Because if we don't have that, every time we put a building up, we take away that much more parking.
Yeah.
And that impacts our ability to service our customers.
No,
and if we have a joint function between us and the Civic Center on the same time, well then all of a sudden everybody's running out of parking. Because when we share that lot, there is a significant amount of parking that comes from the hockey games and the events that's happening at the Civic Center, and then we put a major one on, well, then all of a sudden we're, you know, kind of buttoned as to where everybody's going to go.
And my question was kind of leading as well to bring out the master plan piece of it, because this is a you know, fairly major decision for you guys, and maybe the public doesn't know that this board of directors has a long-term vision, a master plan to go with it. And there's been a lot of foresight put into getting it to this point. This isn't just yesterday's decided we're coming to council. This has been a long-range thing that continues.
Well, I believe our conversation started with this property was probably closer to 5 years ago on preliminary discussions. But yes, you know, we are working, once we have this, and we can really finalize our master plan so we can properly place the facilities and the flow on the grounds to make the most effective sense for the whole project.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, gentlemen. Just two questions. If the grant's turned down, I mean, don't want to be negative, but
Well, reality is,
what happens?
well, I guess we've had the conversation where we'll come back and we'll actually, hopefully we'll get even a portion of the grant, Mr. Baker. Then once we have that, then we can work out some potential interim financing through the city to pay it out over time. So that way we can continue to move
If
ahead.
there's a plan,
Yes,
that's okay.
yes,
The
there is.
second part is the sales agreement or contract to sell or purchase. When will that legal document be ready? Time is an essence, I understand.
Yes, it is.
And we haven't seen any documents. I just wondered when that would be available. It's a legal agreement.
I'll ask the city manager.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, we're in the final stages. We just met this morning again, going over some of the last details that both parties were considering, and that will be provided to council at our next council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I believe, if I can add, the document has gone through our legal counsel, so that it's,
That's the one we want, so.
yeah, to be sure that.
Well, but then both legals got to get together and chat. That can take time too, so, yes, and you're right, Ken, it is. Time is tight.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Thorson.
Councilor Baker asked my question as to what Plan B was, so I think I'm okay. Thank you.
Councilor Monroe.
I guess I just look at it that 10, 15, 20 years out, whether or not the financial commitment will be there for you guys to be able to do anything with this parcel. I'm a huge supporter of the association, and I hope that everything that you guys envision for it can come to fruition. But the fact of the matter is that in that time span, there's going to be different people around this table. There's likely going to be different people around your table. And whether or not any of us are even having the same negotiations, I just want to see that if the association does somehow go south, or you guys decide that you need to sell this parcel of land or something, I just want to make sure that the city's best interest is taken care of as well. So in that cause, I would hope that we would be given the first option for purchase if that did come back, as it was our grant giving you guys the parcel in the beginning. So for me, I'm just saying, I know you have your best interests at heart, and I'm sure we do as a council as well, but you never know what that next board is going to see. You never know what that next committee is going to see. You never know what the next Mike Stork is going to see. And just for protecting that parcel in the city's best interest, like I said, in the future, I would just hope that you, in that write-up or whatever sort of documentation there is that we do receive. I just don't want anyone's hands to be tied. We've been stuck with that, different situations that have gotten passed down to us as a council, and I don't want to leave another council saying, what were they thinking back in 2018?
Absolutely, and we've seen those, and when we go back to our 1984 lease, we see some of those things too, thinking, well, geez, that didn't make a lot of sense then, but then it did. And you're right, and that's where the difficulty thing comes in with envisioning such a futuristic approach,
Right.
that we don't know what the farther generations will do. This land, by no means, is being identified and looked at to purchase to resell.
Right. No, and I
Totally, and I just want to make sure that that is clear, because that's not, we are here to further the development of this association.
for sure.
Now, we have had consultations with establishing a protection clause for council and future city on, I believe there's a couple terminologies, buyback clause, where in fact, if there is this situation where, let's say we were approached in 50 years, we outgrew the spot, you guys wanted to purchase the land back, well, you would receive your 1.3 million back for sure, where we can resell and relocate. That has happened with other associations. at this point, well, we're talking 50, 60.
Right, for
years,
sure.
Right? And it can happen. So we would ensure the fact that your investment is there, the 1.3, to make sure that that goes back. And, or if, by God, if we became insolvent, and that can happen too, but that you would be protected with that as well. So at least your investment is there.
Perfect. I just, like I said, I just don't want to tie the hands of future council in different situations that may arise.
And, you know, who knows, down, maybe it becomes a joint venture facility that we build together to benefit this whole community. There's so many options that we can do to work together from this day moving forward, that it's really, and it takes partnerships to make all of these new projects actually work.
Absolutely, and I definitely see the vision that you guys have, and to see what you have made of the Exhibition Association to this day forward is amazing, right? So I have no doubt that that will come to fruition, but I just want to
Yeah, we are working on some causes to support that.
Perfect.
Councilor Dutch.
It sounds very exciting, and I'm very impressed with certainly the calculation of the 47 million that has finds its way somehow through the hands of people within the community and our businesses. And I think that that's an amount that is substantial and can't be overlooked in terms of the influence and impact you have. So good on you and the board for growing it, because I'm sure it didn't happen overnight. One of the concerns I do have, I guess, as I look at this, is that you have a master plan, and I'm not sure, I'm certainly not aware of it. And at some point in time, it'd be fun to be able to sit down and look at that master plan in terms of, you alluded to perhaps a partnership with the city and all those other pieces, and maybe administration has chatted with you about it. The other part for me, though, I guess, is that what role members of the city play in influencing that master plan as well. Looking at it and saying, yeah, we think it's a good idea, a bad idea. And so I'm just thinking about that planning process as well, because if we want to talk about benefit, the potential influence they may have for suggestions and direction, I think would be important as well.
Absolutely. I'd like to speak to that for a moment. Absolutely. We feel that our master plan has to meld with what the city's master plan is for the whole area. So once we are more defined, I do envision us becoming more working collaboratively together to finalize that master plan, because that whole area, I believe, to the north and to the east of there is under review of a plan, I'm not sure, area structure plan, thank you. So we have to kind of do that, I believe, together to make sure that we're both making the right decisions for the right reasons in the right locations. We have briefed a bit of our vision with council once or twice. One of our goals objective, of course, is that we would start having an annual meeting with council so that we can make sure everybody's asking those same questions and part of it. And I do envision where the knowledge of the council and the knowledge of administration to support the development of this master plan to make it meld is crucial. And I think it becomes that much more important that that relationship continues to grow on that side. Does that help, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely does.
Councilor Pennington.
Yeah, I've always been a supporter of the Lloyd X, and you guys are a great economic driver. There's not many larger than the exhibition here in Lloyd, and so I support what you're doing, and I wish you best of luck here on your grant. May you get $1 million.
Well, that's our goal.
I'll finish this off if I may. I guess, Mike and Shane, thank you very much for your presentation. You've had some very good points. As a city council, we can understand being landlocked. The last thing anyone wants to be is landlocked. And with cooperation of both urban and rural, I think this is an example of where the city and the community and the surrounding areas work together to improve not just for the city or the urban or the rural. It's a combined effort, and I think that I appreciate you bringing this proposal forward. Certainly, I think that the question you hit it, and I just want to reconfirm that as well. You presently have some property on the leased property. There's items there that you'll be responsible for that will be on the city's tab for the old hangars and things like that.
That is correct. That's on the 25.54 acres.
Okay, so because there's a whole bunch of this, and there's a lot of history here, and for most of us around this table, and I even think my good colleague here, Councilor Baker, he went in 1984. I don't think you were on council at that time. So we've got a lot of history that we're dealing with.
In fairness, we've had control of that property for 36 years.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It becomes who is where it is.
And I think, at the time, the 99-year lease was the solution of the day, and it worked well. we're dealing with leases and we're dealing with $1 leases and things like that, and our council certainly making sure that we want to put the best foot forward for the city, but at the same time. So I appreciate the presentation. Thank you very much. Well, I do indeed wish you all the best in that $1 million grant, because we'd love to sell some property for $1 million and put a few coppers in the bank for the city. So we'll thank you for the presentation. I believe this, if there's no other questions, hopefully the council.
And if you have some other clarifications, even after, in a day or two, by all means, we'll come meet with you guys, because this is an important decision for both of us. And if there's any more clarifications, I have no issue coming back to address council on any of your requests.
Councilor.
Thank you. I don't know who drew that map, but I sure wish I could get a copy of it. The ones you gave me the last time, I couldn't read mine.
Well, Ken, I gotta tell you, I was struggling myself. So, to me, this gives you way more.
No, I don't get this one, so.
This Jackie, our good Jackie, she did the.
And you're driving by 51 kilometers.
Okay.
Can't really pick it all up.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the hard copy.
Yes, the maps are in there, Mr. Baker, so that should help. Don't worry, I struggled with the last one too. That's why we went to this version. This is more visual. I can tell you what every piece of that.
I think everybody can see very clearly what we're looking at.
Yeah.
It's very well laid out. Well, if there's no other comments, again, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation. Thank you to the board of directors members that are here in the gallery joining you as well. We appreciate seeing the support from the association. Thank you. Again, we talked about it. Your association provides not just your presentation, but as an example, last week, the way Mr. Heavy Oil Show was hosted at the exhibition. They rent the grounds from the exhibition, but without the grounds, the show doesn't happen.
Well, there are services that we look
There's a great deal of services, and I can see where that $47 million number comes from very easily, how it attributes to adding on to the value of the community. So, thank you very much.
And I have provided the economic impact report to administration, so if you guys wish to have a by all means.
Thank you very much.
And I want to say thank you guys for your support as well, and you're here. All right.
Moving on to agenda item number 5, administrative reports. Administration reports, I'll look to the city manager for 5.1.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 5.1 property tax update. Kyle Sutler from our assessment and taxation team.
Good afternoon, Kyle.
Thank you, Your Worship, for your council. I'm here today to provide an update to the committee on the property tax receivables and pre-authorized debit or PAD agreements. Property taxes were levied and bills were mailed out on May 18th, 2018. Taxes were due June 30th. Several media releases and social media platforms were utilized to advise property owners the tax notices were out and when they were due. This year, the city had collected 88% of the 2018 levy by the due date of June 30th. The total property tax receivables balance, including arrears, was $7.318 million at June 30th. For comparison, last year, the city had an accounts receivable balance of $6.992 million with a 12% smaller levy. The current property tax accounts receivable balance is $5.547 million at July 31st. I'll do a little further update on that later. Of the remaining balance, $3.787 million is outstanding for the city's municipal and capital levies, and $1.743 million is outstanding for education levies for the school divisions. There's also $18,000 uncollected from the Business Improvement District levy. Tax reminder notices were sent out in August for any tax accounts with an outstanding balance over $60. So I'd just like to provide an update to that. As of September 14th, our total accounts receivable balance was $4.406 million, so we've collected it over another $1 million. So municipal and capital is $3.031 million, education's $1.362 million, and the bid is $13,500. Also, I'd like to speak about the pre-authorized debit program. This was initiated in 2013. Property owners that enroll have monthly payments withdrawn as prepayments towards the following year property taxes. Enrollment in the PAD program has increased 23% since last July. There are currently over 550 accounts enrolled in the PAD program. Administration has made some updates to the PAD program this year to make the program more user-friendly for property owners. And originally we were going to be bringing forward a formal property tax PAD agreement policy to council for review. I have received direction that this will now be a directive going to ELT for approval. So if there's any questions.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the numbers you've given us, those are all for the current year taxes outstanding. Do we, when you show on the other page, July 2017, just on the one that we're on here now, that's showing where they were at that point in the prior year. So that's where you were at the end of June 2017 compared to where you were at the end of June 2018.
That's correct, yes.
And how are we doing as far as 2017 taxes outstanding in terms of how much is outstanding from the prior year?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councilor Carson. We're still working on getting arrears collected. We'll be starting the tax enforcement process here later this fall with the lien process. At this point, our total arrears balance is less than $1 million, but we anticipate collecting the majority of that before the end of December through our tax enforcement process. Any that aren't paid as of December 31st, the 2018 taxes become arrears, and at that point we have to register tax liens.
Thank you. So would this be relatively correct in saying is that once you get after the 30, 60, 90-day period outstanding, that number slows down until you start putting the enforcement measures in?
Yeah, so that's correct. So a lot of our current 2018 taxes that are outstanding also have 2017 taxes outstanding. So often it's the same properties.
Okay. One other question was just around the education one, because as I understand it, we collect on behalf of the school divisions and then we pay them back. Does that process require for us to actually receive the payment prior to us having to write a check? Or have we had to pay out for amounts that we didn't actually collect?
So with the education taxes, we pay the school divisions on a monthly basis based on what we've collected to the end of that month.
Okay, so it is purely on what's collected. We're not having to basically eat a potential write-off on their behalf.
Right, the assumption is
that would be a concern to me if it ever got to a significant number, but it sounds like that wouldn't be an issue.
Thank you.
Good question, Councilor. That was one I had, so that's one taken care of. My list. Anybody else have some questions for Kyle? Certainly, Kyle, you alluded to the PAD program, and I think that in my conversations over this since this past tax year's notices have went out, I've heard that very clearly, mainly from businesses, but from residents as well. So I appreciate hearing 23% uptake in that program, and I think that is something that through you and hopefully communications and administration, we can continue to make sure people are aware of that. As business owners, I heard very clearly that with the tax increase that came, it was a chunk that they had to pay out, and depending on how they budget. So if we can give them a tool to pay their taxes monthly, that they're fully aware of on a monthly basis, then an increase, if an increase does happen, it's a lot easier to take than one lump sum. It would be that increase would be applied over a monthly basis rather than all of a sudden they're paying their taxes at the end of June and they've received a significant increase as we saw this past year. So that's the message I wanted to share with the administration and the public. I heard the message very clearly from my chair in the conversations talking to taxpayers and business owners that having that opportunity to look at a monthly basis, they can budget accordingly because they're budgeting on a long-term basis, on a yearly basis for businesses, that giving them that tool is excellent. So the more we can communicate that, I think that'll have even more dividends paid for both parties. Councilor Carson.
I was wondering if there's any way of knowing you know, from looking at the way bills are paid, being able to tell the difference between individuals who just pay lump sum at the end of the year versus ones where it's paid from their financial institution. Like, because, you know, many people have the same thing set up with their mortgage where it just comes off with their mortgage every month and then the bank ultimately pays the bill and then they may have to top up the difference, whatever the case is. I'm wondering, is there any way of us being able to determine whether there's a segment of the population that's just doing outright payments in June where they're not doing incremental payments? And if there was, would there be a way to market to them that this is a good idea and may help them with their budgeting over the course of a year?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Torreson. I think there's definitely some room for additional advertising around this pre-authorized debit program. As part of the website redevelopment, we've advertised this more strongly on the website, and it has its own page now for residents to directly go through to find the form to get started on that. As far as the banks paying the property taxes through the mortgage, they're collecting on a monthly basis. They remit the taxes to us at the end of June as well. I can definitely run some numbers if you'd like as to how many are paid by a mortgage compared to by the property owner. The ones that are paid by the mortgage, I think that number has increased in the last number of years due to the tightening up of regulations around mortgages and that kind of thing. There have been definitely some mortgage companies which are starting to require residents to set up to have them pay the taxes rather than the property owner.
Okay. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I was just wondering if it's possible to identify which ones are not going through the mortgage process. Maybe there's not because it just can see as a lump sum coming from one or the other. But if there was a way, maybe you could market to those people that, hey, this could help benefit you. Obviously, it benefits the city because you have way lower kind of aged accounts receivable at the end of the year, and it may help the individuals that have budget issues to try and make smaller payments throughout the year. But in either way, thanks for your presentation. It's great.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Thanks, Doug. The existing policy, I don't know what that is. This got started when things got tough for people. Do we have a means test? Like, how do you determine who could be on the program and who doesn't? The reason I ask, we could have every taxpayer in town wanting to pay monthly rather than early in the year. And how would that impact our cash flow and how we're operating our city if everybody decided to go on a 12-month cycle? Like, I'm just not familiar with the existing policy and how we got to this monthly program. I'm not saying it's bad, I just don't know how we got there.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Baker. So under the current pre-authorized debit agreement, it is meant to be a prepayment for the next year's taxes. So in order to enroll in the program, you do have to have your current year taxes paid in full. So this is a prepayment for the 2019 taxes now. The payment amount is based on the previous year's tax levy, so it is an estimate. And then the last payment in June would pick up any remaining balance so that their taxes are paid in full by June 30th. There actually was no specific policy in regards to the pre-authorized debit agreements before, so that was the reason why we decided to go ahead with a directive, just so that we had some formal written verbiage about the program itself.
Your Worship, I guess we just got to be careful that everybody is on it. It causes problems. I don't know.
If I understand correctly, Councillor, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, this program already, when you start paying in July of 2018, you're paying towards 2019. That's
oh,
so it actually it's ahead of the range, which I appreciate very much. Yeah. No,
I was thinking this was this year's taxes.
No, because they're pre-paid.
My mistake.
It's moving it ahead so that
oh,
at the end of
different
June,
story.
Yeah, no, I had the same concern when you raised it. I was looking forward to where this was going to go because at the end of the day, because this previous councils had went with the credit card program where people were able to pay. So I believe at one time finance came back and said it was actually costing us money While you're prepaying taxes, you're giving away more by the cost of the visa and the discounts that was going on, because we were giving them a discount at the end of December. That was the previous council or two back that resolved that prepayment time.
And just blew it right on top.
Now we've got this, and this seems, hopefully is working well. Councilor Bagley?
Yeah, as far as a lot of different on the institutions, as far as them taking over repossessions. Once they repossess a house, is it the financial institute that is responsible for the taxes if they are not on a program? And if so, do you have a list of those, and are they paying?
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Council of Hagan. So in the case of repossession, the title of the property would actually change. And through that process, the lawyers have to transfer title with a clear title, so the taxes have to be paid. So as it goes through that process, taxes are paid out by the lawyer's office or by the previous owner.
Thanks.
Councilor Dutcher?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I was looking at the numbers for outstanding July 2018 and July 2017, and then factored in an increase in taxation. So we're actually outstanding 5.5 million in 2018. In 2017, we're just under 5.7. So actually, we have a better payment record this year, substantially. If you think that even if the raise was 500 to 1,000, and factor into what is the difference there, 200,000. So we have a substantial increase in payment, which is good to hear.
That's excellent. Yeah, I noticed that as well. That speaks well with either there is a little bit more money in the community, certainly the information getting out to the taxpayers to let them know they're in arrears, and that whole communication process seems to be working a little better. So compliments to you and the communications team. Any other questions for Kyle? Thank you very much for the information, Kyle. It's always good to see that things are moving ahead. And we'll likely see more of you later this year as the steps from 2017 catch up to us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 5.2. We'll look to the city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present amendments to the MDP and land bylaw number 5, 2016, I'd like to call Natasha from our planning and development.
Good afternoon, Natasha.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, Council. I'm here to present the amendment to the MDP and the land use bylaw. In July of 2018, we received an application to amend Block 9, Plan 3407 HW within the MDP and the land use bylaw. In November 2017, we approved a home-based business major on these lands. Recently, it has been determined that Walking on Water, the operating business, has outgrown the definition of a home-based business and would be better categorized as a commercial space. The subject lands are adjacent to the Central Business District and have been identified as part of the Downtown Transition Zone within our MDP. That area is defined as a mixed use of Downtown Transition Zone that will encourage additional retail and higher density residential development to be located within close proximity of the downtown, facilitating the outward growth of the downtown core. In the opinion of administration, this proposal is compatible with adjacent land uses as well as the intention of the Downtown Transition Zone. In July, we initiated the 21-day referral period. When that period closed, there were no responses identifying concerns received. However, recently we have received one letter from an adjacent landowner. To summarize, they raised issues around traffic safety and property values. Specifically in regards to property values, there's insufficient evidence at this time to justify those concerns. Specifically in regards to the safety issues, we've gone back to engineering and we've confirmed that this proposed land use will not pose any additional safety concerns to the area. One of the major concerns was on 52nd. They didn't want any additional access onto 52nd because that's already a fairly congested area. And if anything, their garage access onto 52nd will be removed and all traffic will be funneled through the back lane. Through our review, it was also noted that the applicant would be required to provide 6 off-street parking stalls. As I discussed, these parking stalls would back into the lane and then access onto 52nd from the back lane. This Development of the parking stalls will be done through the DP, which should this amendment be approved, they'll be required to resubmit for a development permit, and then we can identify those constraints there. So at this time, we're just looking to council to give us direction to go forward.
Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Worship. You know, when I first saw this one, to me, it was, it's already kind of in that use and really what's changing. But the only thing that you're saying to me that muddies that a little bit, how are you going to fit 6 parking stalls on that property?
So we've done the preliminary calculations already. I'm trying to see if there's a best map that I can have them put up. Not really a best one. Maybe, yeah, this one. So there is the garage at the south of the property. If the garage is removed, that whole back section of the property can be turned into stalls, and based on the calculations with our land use bylaw, we can almost perfectly fit 6 stalls.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
fine. When I saw the garage there, it made no sense, but if the garage wasn't there...
They're going to remove the garage, and then so that garage currently access onto 52nd. A requirement of the DP will be that they, in essence, lose their access onto 52nd, and they'll have to back into the back lane and then proceed to 52nd.
Okay. Yeah, I guess once there's more information as far as that, because that'll have to come separately with a development permit because it's direct control, or it will not?
Potentially,
Council.
yeah.
Yeah, other than that, like, it's kind of, it'd be interesting, or I think it's important for council maybe to get the comments, like, in detail, whether there's any, you know, validity to them or not, but I think if there's residents that have a concern with this,
Yeah.
it's important that it gets all the way to us as far as what their concern is, so that we can give it adequate consideration.
Yeah, I just received the letter pretty much Thursday, Friday. I was going to send it to Legislative Services to remove personal information, and then I can have that circulated to council on my presentation on September 24th, as well as depending on how this proceeds forward. They have asked to speak at the public hearing, depending on when council schedules that. You could potentially hear from them in person as well.
Okay, thank you.
That answers my question, was whether we're going to get 6 stalls. But,
Yeah.
if they're going to remove the garage, the property is X amount of feet wide, and based on the stall requirements, I guess that can certainly be accommodated. So, yeah, those questions as well raised by the concerned resident, because, you know, I guess it depends on if it becomes more commercialized. You think the value would go up, but that's something that needs to be looked at from that perspective as well. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Natasha. Appreciate you bringing that forward. Okay. Moving on to item 5.3, proposed changes to curbside recycling. I'll let this imagine.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 5.3, curbside recycling program. I'd like to invite Karen De La Rosa forward.
Good afternoon, Karen.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. In January 2018, China implemented what's called the National Sword Program. This program intended to limit the amount of recycled paper and packaging that goes into the country. The program implemented 2 things. So first is the ban on certain grades of paper and plastic coming into China. With China being the largest market for recovered paper and plastic from North America, this ban meant that a lot of our materials, especially plastic 3 to 7, had nowhere to go. Though we have some local markets or local processors in Canada, the China ban meant that the supply has significantly outweighed demand. The second thing that this program implemented is the increase in purity requirements for materials that are coming into China. Previously, they implemented a 5% contamination threshold. So that means that for every 1,000 kilograms of recycled paper or plastics coming into China, they would accept up to 500 kgs of contamination within that load. With this program, it's now 0.5 to 1% contamination rate. So for every 1,000 kgs, they will only accept loads that have 50 kilograms of contamination within. This has resulted to a significant increase in the processing cost for recycling processors here in Canada. So this global changes in the recycling industry has significantly affected municipalities and processors across Canada. Our curbside services provider has actually approached the city to implement some changes to the curbside program. The change that they have proposed is to limit the acceptable plastics to only grades 1 and 2 and eliminate plastics 3 to 7 in the recycle stream. This would mean that we will have to landfill about 20 metric tons of recycling annually, but this would also ensure that the materials that we put out on the curb is properly processed and is acceptable to the more stringent markets overseas.
Sorry, Councilor Bacon, back again for Councilor Torres.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not up on my plastics. What are 3 to 7 plastics?
So plastics 3 to 7 are, there's actually classes and definitions of plastics 3 to 7, but these are your margarine tubs, your yogurt containers, those types of plastics.
So those ones currently are acceptable under blue bag now?
Yeah.
What happens when they're not?
So once we accept this proposed change, they will no longer be able to recycle these types of materials, and for now they would have to be landfilled.
So it'll come with a public awareness campaign and a whole lot of that.
We've worked with the marketing team to put together an education piece around this if council does approve the proposed change.
So what are plastics 1 and 2?
Plastics 1 and 2 are your milk jugs, deposit items like beverage containers, those types of rigid plastics.
Councilor Torres.
Sorry, 2 questions. First one, where do grocery bags fit into this?
Grocery bags, we've never been able to recycle grocery bags.
Asking for a friend. So what happens if someone puts something in there that they're not supposed to put in there? Do we get penalized as a city for that?
Right now, people do not get penalized for the city for putting plastics or materials that we're not able to recycle. However, we would like to encourage residents to make sure that what they put into the recycling or in the blue bags are actually recyclable materials, because that significantly affects the processing and the sorting of these materials in the materials recovery facilities. And the more that we can give the processor a cleaner recycle stream, the more efficient they can be and the more we're able to send out a product or basically a commodity that is marketable and sellable.
So this is me being, I don't know, maybe it's a thing or not. So is this any less work for them that we would, that we get a deal? So assuming that this adds additional costs to them, if we were to try and keep doing this, they would pass the costs on to us. So if there's less costs for them one way or another, do we get the cost savings?
Actually, their cost has already increased with stricter and more stringent requirements for the materials. They have tried to ask the city for more money to process the materials, but we have told them that we are not entertaining that as of this time. So the move to remove plastics 3 to 7 is basically just giving them a material that is easier for them to process and to sort. So hopefully that will manage their costs a little bit better than their processing costs now.
Council Datchuk and then Council Victor. Does that give you your answer, Council?
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So,
Council Datchuk.
No, the way you answered it was fine. Whether I'm happy with the answer or not, it's a different question.
Yeah, so I can give more definitive numbers, but I have to provide that numbers in camera.
Okay.
It's specific to Shippo's processing facility.
Fair enough.
Council
Yeah.
Datchuk.
thank you. So it's kind of striking because I'm thinking the volume of plastics that we're going out is probably going to decrease significantly in the amount of recycling and the impact. I guess I'm sort of thinking about the cost of, and the impact of the cost on our landfill now. Because if I look at the amount of plastics in the past, we used to, at least I think we were able to recycle the plastics, but they probably found their way to the home in the vortex of the Pacific Ocean because we was dumped them willy-nilly. But I'm thinking overall in terms of plastics, have we ever sort of numbered it out so we can think about the number of tons of plastics we produce as a city annually? And I guess if we've done that, then the next question would be, is there another viable commercial option somehow that we can get a grant for or partner with or regionally put together, because we're not the only ones that are not to be taking this plastic. And if there's a way for us to get in front of this as a community effort, I'm wondering, because really when you think about it, you know, the milk jugs, I don't buy a plastic milk jug, and I guess if you have a larger family, perhaps you do that, but I mean, I'm thinking of all the other plastics that I'm recycling, and they're probably going to be in 3 to 7. So what's the point of the recycling program, which is kind of the underlying question in all this? And yet the cost will now, we'll be pushing it toward down. And if our landfill, pardon me, so what, is there another alternative aside from continuing to put and fill in this down the landfill that's costing us, I can't remember what the amount is, but it's a big number. So is there a financial, what's everybody else going to do? Have we heard anything?
So to put the number a little bit more into perspective, we put out 820 tons of recyclables annually.
Okay.
Plastics 3 to 7 compose, plastics 3 to 7 is about 2.4, 2.5% of that total. So that's about 20 tons out of the 820 tons that we do recycle. So even with taking plastics 3 to 7 out, we are still able to divert a significant amount of recyclable materials from the recycle stream. In terms of a strategy, actually the federal government and provincial governments have been putting together some strategies to address the plastic issue. My thoughts are, in terms of a local strategy, we're very much limited in terms of what we can do, because at the end of the day, the recycling part is very dependent on the processors, what you would turn that product to after it has been collected on the curb. There's no cheap solution for that, and so I think it's more of a national strategy than anything else. We definitely need to make our dependence to outside markets a little bit less than what we are doing now, but I think it would be more of a Canada-wide strategy than anything else.
So if I might, so when people are taking categories 1 through 7 plastics, are they putting all 7 of them in when they do, let's say, refining the plastic to create plastic chips or whatever they do, or little bits and pieces of it, or only certain categories are applicable for use?
Plastics 1 and 2, typically the materials recovery facilities are able to sort plastics 1 and 2.
Okay.
The difficulty with plastics 3 to 7 is to be able to sort them by category, and I think that's why they are typically lumped as a one big item or one big commodity. So in terms of what you can do with that after, like I said, it's going to be dependent on the processors and what you can actually turn the product.
So I guess I'm hearing you can't put 1 through 7 into one bin and come up with a product at the other end.
What's that?
I'd like to have a bin that's all 1 through 7 go in,
No.
and the product comes out the other. Because the other part I'm thinking about, certainly in Sweden and other parts of the world, we're using plastics as a form of fuel to generate electricity. So if we have 820 tons of plastics, why don't we get a project going instead of paying them? We have our own collection agency and we have 820 tons of fuel.
The waste to energy facilities, typically they have to run a little bit higher. The 820 tons that we do produce a year, that's probably what they would consume in a day. There are no modular waste to energy facilities that I have seen as of yet. And that's a struggle with these types of programs, and definitely that's where regionalization definitely will help. But these are usually built on a bigger scale than a smaller scale processing. They're more economically feasible that way.
Council Baker, then Council Payne, then Council Monroe.
Thank you, Your Worship. When you read this report, it would appear that type 3 to type 7 product isn't worth having. Maybe the Chinese figured out that it costs them more money to process than it was worth. That's why they're not taking it. They have a contamination rate of 0.5 to 1%. That's probably pretty low when you got a ship full of garbage that comes from wherever. At the end of the day, financially, I haven't got my head around the finance. What do you see this is costing us a year net?
In terms of cost, the 20 tons that we have to landfill is going to cost us about $1,300 a year. And that is because we're able to, we do have compactors, so we're able to increase the density of that material before we landfill it. So it would not be costing us a huge amount of money.
But only $1,300?
Yes, sir. So that's 20 tons, and our cost to landfill is $65 per ton.
It sounded to me like that was pretty low, but that's all.
Mm-hmm. And
if that's that low and it in fact is that, then it's really not the worst thing in the world. We still have to put the waste in our landfill that we normally would recycle. Is there any other way to get rid of this stuff besides selling it to the world market?
There's other technologies out there, but as I mentioned earlier, most of these technologies are not built for small scale processing. They're built for a 1,000 ton a day type of processing facility. And other countries, especially like in Europe, for example, have decreased their dependency on recycling. They're more into the waste to energy type of diversion. But at the same time, they have really made a huge effort to regionalize these facilities so it becomes more economically feasible for them to run.
Because we still got 7 types of plastic.
Yeah, there's still 7 tons, but at the end of the day, we've got 5 to deal with.
Yeah, so what percentage was 1 and 2 again? Is it in this report?
No, sir, it's not in the report. 1 and 2 would be around 40% of what we recycle.
Okay, sorry I missed that. I just wondered because Chinese economy, they normally demand the best. When they're buying lumber from North America, they get the best lumber in the world. And everybody else gets what's left over. Because that's their demand on their specification. And they have such a big population, they can get away with it, they can do that. So they want our good stuff and they're going to leave us with the bad stuff. Is there anybody in North America that uses number 1 and number 2?
Yeah, we do have some markets in North America for number 1 and number 2, and even for 3 to 7. But 2/3 of our recycling actually goes to China. So with China not accepting plastics 3 to 7, our local markets are currently flooded with plastics 3 to 7.
Okay.
Waste management professionals, there's been a lot of I guess opinions on why China is implementing this program, and one of them is that since China is a booming economy, they would want to process their own plastics and paper. So there's a huge supply within their own country, and so they're not wanting to take anywhere in from outside of China.
Thank you.
Councilor Pennington, then we'll get Councilor Moore.
And I think it's going to get worse as well by 2020. China's not going to be taking 1 or 2 as well. So I think we're going to have to be looking within Canada and within the U.S. To do this, because it kind of caught everybody off guard, and they were getting a lot of junk and having to deal with it. So you don't blame them, but they were using a lot of this material for their manufacturing. So some experts say that there's going to be some problems. They won't be able to sell some of these products cheap. They're going to have to be using real raw materials again, not recycled. So that will have an impact.
And actually on the 2020 deadline, in August, they have announced that they're going to stop imports of all waste material from anywhere. So it's, we are definitely seeing a lot of municipalities, including the federal and provincial governments, preparing for that.
Councilor,
My question was answered. It was just in terms of the amount of the cost that it was going to, but only $1,300 for that.
And and that mostly is because of the density. So we were able to compact that material, and so it takes a lesser airspace within the landfill.
Have we thought about, in terms of doing a marketing piece to reduce people's use, instead of buying individual yogurt containers, buy the big ones, you can wash your bowls at home and that sort of thing? What would we be looking at for a financial commitment in terms of the educational piece for people?
I know that Communications and Marketing has budgeted some dollars into additional educational pieces for curbside program for next year, and we will continue to do that throughout the year. It's going to be more of an ongoing education piece of community.
And I just add to that, I guess I think that we're seeing some cities are banning plastic bags entirely as one of the solutions to doing this. And the upside is that there are people out there with solutions now, and I don't remember the type of plastic, and that's kind of what I was asking, but it was a fellow who was the size of a house fridge, was putting the plastic in on one end and doing plastic bricks out the other end, and he put the pads out for free with the idea and goal to build houses that were earthquake-proof in a lot of earthquake zones, and so that was one strategy there. But right now they're going out, the boom is being tested just off the west coast of the U.S. and they're pulling out this 1,100 meter boom, pulling out 1,300 miles, so the boom is going to be capturing all the plastic in that vortex out in the Pacific Ocean with the goal of having almost all of it out by 2020 or 2030, whatever the goal is. But so there's going to be an abundance of plastic, and their goal is to actually manufacture and use that plastic, and I think the bulk of it is probably going to be, the plastic bags. But I think, again, well, it's only $1,300. I mean, as a city, I guess the challenge back to us is, are there strategies to, it's not just $1,300 one year, it's going to be more every year thereafter. If everybody is saying that their plastic is not being taken elsewhere. So I think that may be something on the horizon for us as a city as well.
So Karen, would there be a possibility here of reducing the amount of pickup on the recyclable side of things? Obviously, there's going to be less volume, so if it went down to once per month or bi-weekly, is that an option that you guys have spoken about?
That's not an option we have talked about yet. I think there's definitely some value in having weekly pickups. That way, it always comes to people's mind that, hey, I have to go to my recycling now, just to keep that top of mind. But definitely, if that is a direction the council wants to take, we can definitely look into that.
Carrie, if I could, certainly Wainwright was running an incinerator, and I know that we don't do a lot from a regional perspective with Wainwright, but I'd ask you to pursue that one just as a potential spot. I don't know if they're still running the incinerator. It's attached to the canola facility that they have there. It provides the heat from their incinerator. So I'm not sure if that would be, because for people's information, I hope most people realize natural gas creates plastic. And that's, so it is a form of carbon, just in a different format. So if there is an energy source, as indicated by some council, I think it's a great opportunity. Then the question is it economical? But I think if we explore that, at least we'll have that. And again, as Councilor Baker likes to refer to former life, I had an opportunity to grind oil jugs, or a company I worked for, and we were making it into what they call flake, which in turn was into fence posts and bumper stops. there's options, but again, is the market there and the cost? And I go back to another gentleman I worked with at a different job, said that's the problem. To recycle plastic is not, the cost is too great to what versus the raw plastic. And that's one of the challenges. So natural gas is extremely cheap today and as a fuel source and as a source of plastic. So it's challenging for that marketplace. So I'm sure that's part of it. If gas went back to $18 a gigajoule, then they have a different discussion with China. But in today's market, that's not even close to the expectations. So from that perspective. So contract-wise, Karen, is there an allowance today with our provider, contractors with the city for a rate adjustment on that either they can ask for a rate adjustment? I think you mentioned it, but we don't have to grant them that. Is that what I
That's correct. There's no permission within the contract for a rate adjustment. So we have rejected GFL's proposal to adjust their rates to cover some of their additional operating costs and China's stricter requirements for peer reviewing.
So when you talk about the 20 tons, is that what we expect potentially then people would send, or would we be getting to, I'm not sure if GFL sorts locally, I know they have a facility in town. No, they don't, it gets sorted in Edmonton, so we're not going to end up with people do after the education program, there could still be plastics, but GFL will have to deal with that at Sugar Park or wherever their facility is.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Nope, and you've indicated March 31st of 2020, another one of those contracts that has been a little longer term, is when we'll be back to discussing this on a much firmer basis. But I appreciate you talking about communications, because I think that's key to help consumers and our residents, our businesses understand the change that they need to make, because that's what it's going to take. We're going to have to educate people, and my concern is it's an expressed. If we start to convince them that 3 to 7, or well, why am I putting 1 and 2 in there, and they're just going to end up in the garbage. So it's going to be a very important phase that we make sure they understand there's still value, and if they recycle their bottles and jugs, then they're getting money back for it. But trying to keep that as minimal as possible if we can, and go from there.
And again, the numbers, in terms of numbers, plastics 3 to 7 is only 2.5% out of the total that we do recycle. So we are still able to recycle paper, paper and any other packaging into our blue bags. So there's still a lot more that we can divert from that point.
Excellent, and I think that'll come with communication. Any other questions for Karen?
It's going to, you know, and it's going to be a fascinating journey ahead, but I'm just thinking that if we had the space, would it be possible for us to even stockpile some of the plastics that are in 3 to 7?
There are some municipalities that have actually done that.
Okay.
However, there's really no end in sight in terms of the market availability for plastics 3 to 7. So we might be stockpiling for a long time and having to eventually landfill it. But to answer your question, yes, there is a possibility to do that.
Because I'm just thinking, you know, we will have a problem that's this big. The city of Edmonton will have a problem that's this big, and at some point in time, they'll probably have better resources in terms of wanting to use the plastic as fuel, and that might be our opportunity to even sell it or even give it to them if they just come to get it for that matter. And that would be at a cheaper cost than putting it through our landfill. And our cost would be basically storing it. So, you know, does that mean sites in the city where we collect the plastic bags and plastics 3 to 7, so there's sites around where you can go and drop them off. So even if you caught half of it or more of it, I'm just thinking that, it just ideas bouncing around.
So, yeah, we would have cost of storage, we would also have cost of sorting.
Yeah.
So with plastics 3 to 7 not being marketable at this time, it would increase the amount of possible contaminants within the clean recycling stream. And that might result in the clean recycling stream being not able to meet the stream requirements that we need for overseas. So that's also some, I guess, another perspective.
I'm just thinking more of burning it or something. I'm not as much worried about the contaminants because if we go in the incinerator, they're done.
I mean, so if we're able to market classics 1 and 2, classics 3 to 7 would actually be a contaminant. So if our processing, we're able to give our processing facility a cleaner classics 1 and 2, they're able to more effectively sort that into shipments that would meet the 0.5 to 1% contamination rate. But yeah, that's the incineration is one of the options that larger municipalities have for the classics 3 to 7 is at this time.
It's going to be very interesting. It may be a very good subject to broach at AUMA in Red Deer, as now that it's starting to be on radars, cities, towns, and, villages, and throughout from an urban municipality perspective. It's going to be something we're going to have to deal with. So, thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate the presentation.
Councillor Fanker suggests perhaps joining Alberta Saskatchewan plan in Westminster.
That's an excellent idea. I think that we can certainly start that discussion with some people, because there might be federal money available if they had any to give away.
You could use the wastewater to rinse it out.
There we go. We might have to do that. On to the city manager for number 6, governance and priority matters for 6.1.
Thank you, Your Worship. To discuss the draft communications policy, I'll ask Neil from our communications department to come forward.
Welcome, Leo.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Your Council, for the opportunity to discuss with you today our draft communications policy. So the need for an approved communications policy was highlighted during our conversations with George B. Cuff and Associates back in early 2017. And after much research, review, and discussion, administration is pleased to present a draft communication policy for your consideration. I also wanted to thank the Life Services team for their work in helping us prepare this item for today. So given today's ever-changing technologies and social media platforms, it has become increasingly challenging for organizations like ours to put firm rules in place to govern how we communicate with residents and with each other. So the intent of this policy is more so to add clarity around what we as an organization are trying to achieve with our communications, and to provide some sound principles that will guide us in delivering those communications. So rather than recite the entire document, I'd like to simply review our 3 main objectives, which I think kind of neatly summarize the overarching intent. And those objectives are as follows: that city communication measures, materials, and messages are citizen-focused, transparent, and clearly presented. That city communications are accessible and available through multiple channels, encouraging public dialogue and participation. And that the city actively participates in social media to share information and encourage dialogue with citizens while using sound judgment and logic in accordance with city policies and procedures. I would also point out that the approval of this policy and adoption of the recent adoption of a new social media directive for administration may in fact allow council to repeal the current social media policy in the future, which is something we would explore with the Ledge Services team. So that is in summary it. Thank you, and welcome any questions or further direction from council.
Questions, comments from council?
It's an easy one after the rest of those items.
Councilor,
I think it's a great spot to start. The only one thing I was thinking about is that in there we talk about only designated spokesperson shall provide information to the media. I think it'd be worthwhile summers when you're actually identifying it. If I missed that, I apologize. So whether it's even under member of council or in that category by definition, spokesperson for the city, I would put in whoever that person is right in front.
Okay.
So, and typically that's probably the mayor that is the spokesperson for the city, and in the mayor's absence, his or her designate. But I think it'd be worthwhile because you make reference to it later on in the body.
Yeah.
And I would just put it up there as identifiable person or individual in front.
Good. Yep. With that for sure.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. In your document 8.3, only designated spokesperson shall provide information to media on behalf of the city. Spokesperson shall be members of the city's communication department or appointed by the city manager. What about where does the mayor fit in?
Yeah, you're right, Councilor Baker. That we should change the language in there to address mayor and council as well. That point was more specifically for members of administration, but we can tweak that language.
Like, mayor and council are elected, they talk to the public. You know, but certainly the mayor, the way I read this is,
Yeah.
you're gonna go to jail, your worship, if you, because there's all these acts in here. No, but seriously, it's,
Absolutely, I think that point.
Legal's got it, yeah.
I think the communications team
Yeah,
and
just-
Leo has certainly got, we got it hit on two different angles here, and this is a perfect one that, just for clarity's sake, because that's, the policy, try to be as clear as we can.
oh, for sure, I understand that. I just want to make sure that our mayor can speak for our city.
Yeah.
And
No, that's a good
what's
point.
important, yeah.
Certainly.
The only one other comment is that some reference to flight or flight in there that, so that all communication policy will be adherence with that legislation, whatever it is.
There are some points about all the legislation and stuff that we do follow through this, but I'll double check to make sure that we're FOIA compliant in this as well.
Yeah, it's just an umbrella statement more than anything.
Yeah.
Councilor Torres?
Number 6.4, I just wasn't sure exactly how that one would work. It says social media activities shall not interfere with members of council and administrative work and/or performance. I'm just curious as to what standard of performance would a member of council be held to? Honestly, like I understand if we're saying something as simply you shouldn't be, on social media while you're in the middle of a meeting, well, that goes without saying, but what is it really saying in terms of someone's performance? It's kind of a vague statement unless I'm reading that wrong.
Yeah, as it applies to Councilor Torsten, that is essentially what we were getting at, is that during meetings or times when attention was supposed to be elsewhere, basically. But if you think there's some clarity to be added there, I'm open to that.
It's one of those things where I think it's already dealt with in our procedure bylaw, I believe, is the other distractions. Possibly, but I could be wrong.
Within the procedure bylaw, there's a provision about electronic media during council.
Yeah. And the only reason that comes up is just because I think it's very clear in the procedure bylaw as to what you can and can't do, whereas this is, let's say, vague in terms of using terms like performance, because Glenn might think my performance is fantastic, and Aaron might feel differently. And what that standard is difficult to measure.
Performance can be a bit of a challenge, depending on whose eyes it's being looked at through, so. Councilor.
Your worship, and I think, I don't know where it's written, but I think, and I've been warned of this years and years ago, before social media, that's fairly new, that a council member can say they're not happy with the decision to the press, if you don't like the decision council made. But you cannot and will not talk about a fellow council member. You'll just say, I'm not happy with council's decision, and that's perfectly legal. Because you have a right, because you may have voted against whatever the decision was. You don't have to fall into the cabbage patch because it passed. So that's an important one that I've always remembered or tried to remember along the way. So if you're going to be critical, which you're entitled to, within all those acts, the big thing is just talk about generalities. Don't get into detail because you could get into big trouble.
I think on 6.4 there's an easier way of writing it, and it's writing it in the way of a positive, so that you would say that social media activities shall not be used in the support of members of council administration work.
Yeah, there's.
Okay, so put it where you want it to be and how you want it to be as opposed to not.
Yep.
So it's easier to, then you have to prove that you're actually using it for the right purpose, right? And it just turns it around a little bit, makes it more positive.
That works. I think, thank you, Leo, for bringing this forward, because I think that each member of this council has a different level of social media interaction. I believe it exists in our staff, at the city administration as well. Some guidelines, because some people feel very comfortable with social media, others prefer not to use it, and that's their choice. And I think that giving some policy, as you referred to in George Tuff's report back to this council, is through the governance process, we need to ensure that there is policy so that it's not left hanging in the wind, as they say. And someone said, well, I didn't know we couldn't do that. So thank you for bringing this forward. It certainly will continue to address that, the Tuff report as it's known as, and this is another step forward. So thank you very much for the administration. Councilor Thorson.
One more question. It may be included in the social media policy. I'm going to be honest, I didn't review that before I looked at this one. But as far as having, like for members of council having a disclaimer within profile information, is that within any of those policies? And is it perhaps something that we should put there where it is solely the opinion of X, Y, and Z political page and does not reflect the views of the city? Just in case you get, I don't know, a real wild one on here in the future, and you just, it needs to be clear that these opinions reflect an individual and not the group as a whole. Those types of disclaimers. And you're not speaking for the city, you're speaking for the political individual.
Yeah, let me cross-reference that with the social media policy as it exists today, and I'll see if some clarity is needed around that point.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good point, Councilor. That's, any other questions or comments for Leo? Thank you very much, Leo.
Great. I will just add also, Your Worship, before I conclude, this I see as a policy or as a policy that would require regular checking in and updating, just as the nature of communications changes so much, social media and different things like that. So this would be one that we would want to be reviewing on a regular basis. Yeah, I appreciate Council's feedback on the first draft.
Thank you very much. And point well taken. I think you're absolutely right. It's technology and other items. Some of them I can't even keep up with anymore. You can Twitter, you can do Instagram, and I'm sure there's a couple others that the kids have already developed that I'm way behind on. So it's all good. Thanks very much for that. I'm feeling old early in life. I didn't even think I'd get there, but it's communication. Moving on to 6.2, draft barrier-free policy. I'll let the city manager.
Thank you, Worship. To present 6.2, I'll ask Dan Hobson from our Legislative Services team to come forward.
Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. I'm here today to present you with the draft barrier-free policy. So this policy sets out standards for addressing accessibility. A perfect example of that we deal with every day in our facilities is if we charge or do not charge people that are coming in with support needs when they're coming into the facility to the gym or the pool or something like that. So from a very high level, what this policy does is it sets out that anyone in the public can bring forward a concern to members of administration. Administration will analyze those concerns. If there are significant budgetary impacts, will be brought forward to council for your decision or your input on the matter. There is a note in here that we will be addressing the barriers up to undue hardship. So pretty important term to highlight, and it was noted last time when you guys saw this policy as well. When it was brought forward last time, we were recommending to repeal the inclusion policy. After going back and reviewing both of the policies, we felt that they should stay and that they should remain two separate policies. So that's why this policy is being brought back, as is no changes and no recommendation to remove the inclusion policy at this time. If there's any questions about it, we'll be happy to answer them.
Any comments or questions for Dan? Appreciate you reworking it, Dan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a good idea to keep it separate.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea as far as coming up with a plan for the future, not 5.5. This is coming up with a master plan in the future, but I think that's a great idea.
From our perspective, certainly I know it's being budgeted as we move forward to ensure inclusivity, that people have access to city facilities, and that's continuously being looked at on a regular basis, and we'll continue to address it as best as we can. And it does refer to it simply as a financial requirement that has to be met, that we can budget the money and have the money to make those happen. But I think a great deal of work has been done, and there's always work to do, but this helps identify some direction for administration as well, for planning and for budgetary purposes, to bring it forward if need be. So it gives us a tool. Any other comments? Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Worship. Does this apply just to the city?
Yes.
That's not the public.
No, just to the city.
Strictly city.
Yeah, and city facilities.
And the reason I say that is some of these things are very costly. Maybe not these, but when you get into that accessibility thing, and sometimes a little business just purely simply can't afford it. And I saw that happen right in the city. So, you know, like, because you got to put an elevator in your building for $80,000, $100,000. You're kidding. I don't have $80,000. You know, that's why I asked.
No, it would just be for city-owned facilities.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.3, I see you're back up again through the city manager. Back to that.
So again, I'd like to present you with the draft cannabis retailer fee policy. This policy aims at addressing the business license fees collected from the cannabis retailers in the community. If you recall in the bylaw, there is a fee for cannabis retailers that was recently passed. Those fees are going to be used to public safety initiatives. So what this policy sets out is that those fees will be used to public safety initiatives, and this policy defines what those are and who can apply to them. Basically, the process is very similar to our tobacco retailer fee, where the fees are collected, they're placed in a reserved fund. Administration will do a call for applications. There will be a committee that will bring forward recommendations to council for their approval. And it's pretty well as simple as that. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My only question is just from a practicality standpoint of, so we received these fees, we put all of them into a reserve fund, and now it's that group that is deciding whether or not which different partners can apply for it. Would the city of Lloydminster also be applying for monies if it wanted to be spent on things like supplementing policing costs? Or does that happen at a different stage and then a certain amount is left to go to a group to decide on whether or not to apply to different grants?
So section 5.7 would basically allow the city of Lloydminster to utilize those funds. And the remaining would be allotted to the groups that applied.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, it's a little more tiered. Just the way you said it in the first place, I think it sounded less tiered. But if there is a tier where first it goes through the city of Lloydminster to say, these are what are necessary for these different items we would like to supplement, and then on top of that there is the ability of the different groups to apply for grants?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Just an edit, I think on 5.3, it would just capitalize the Tobacco Reduction Grant Committee. We talked about the Tobacco Reduction Grant and Council Committee, so we know that it's an entity.
Thank you.
But I guess I just want to reinforce that we're not going to create another committee to disperse funds. We already have an existing committee. What the intention is, if that money is available, it will use the existing committee that's already in place to structure it. So,
yes, that's correct.
Your Worship, when this was talked about and the fee it was talked about, I went away thinking that these funds are going to be used towards the extra policing it was going to cost within the city, period. That I must be misunderstood, but that's what I believe because of we talked at length about the potential for extra costs for policing and how we're going to pay for that. So it's all good to put it all over the place, but we have a tobacco reduction group at work, but we got to pay the city bills. So am I wrong in what I was assuming, that it would not necessarily be used for policing?
Well, that's the question. I'll let you
Thank you, Councillor. If you look at 5.5, a safety initiative may be, but is not limited to supplementing police costs or purchasing equipment related to the enforcement of cannabis legislation. So we have placed those items within there, and we do know now. I know Council previously asked that how much would the devices cost. We're looking at about $8,000 a device, and it's about $40,000 for screening devices. So we understand those costs up ahead. And as we look at how this grant is distributed, of course, we'll bring that forward.
Why would 5.3 exist?
So what we've got, Councillor, is the mechanism is there. So if 5.3 is there, to read it. 5.5 lays out some directive, and then 5.7.
As long as that doesn't become the norm.
No, absolutely, and that will be, I think, before it, once we get to this, that because we're laying it out, but we've got options, and rather than have to redo the options, it gives us the option to start with policing as an example. If the city feels that money should go towards, as the city clerk identified, we could take the first 2 years or 3 years and put it towards policing to pay for those equipment.
I guess my concern is a lot more than equipment.
Absolutely.
Enforcing this seems to be a concern across the country. And I believe that for the time being that those funds should be directed towards policing and equipment to look after and nothing else. Only because that's where we're headed in my mind. So should all those things be in there right now? I'm not sure.
I appreciate that, and I'll just answer to comment on that. I think that from the associations that we belong to, AUMA and Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association, both of them are lobbying strongly with the provincial government. I continue to lobby when I had the opportunity with cabinet ministers about sharing the tax revenue from cannabis that was intended, and everything I read about, the federal government gave the province 75% of the split, and with the intention that the province was going to share with the municipalities. And again, we go down that road one more time, that we're at the end of the tail of the cow, and we scratch off the flies with the wave at us, so it's a challenge.
I guess, Your Worship, I'd say when we get to set our share of the 75%, then we can look at other things. That's all I'm saying.
Point well taken, Councillor. Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Worship. I just wonder if it's worth noting, and to me, just because it makes it a little more clear that that tier does exist, where council will annually determine amounts available for grants to outside parties. So then it really does say, okay, this much we're setting aside for safety initiatives within the city. This much is going towards grant allocations, if any. And then we have the the criteria already in the policy for who can apply for it and for what purposes. I just think making the fact that those tiers are in there, it becomes part of the budgeting process as to how much is going to be directed to safety initiatives, rather than the way it is now. It sounds as though funds will be collected. They may be used for safety initiatives or for these other grants, but the amounts that will be distributed will be determined by this group. And I believe that council should determine how much this group gets to allocate to other parties rather than the other way around.
We can certainly make that amendment.
And I think that we're trying to say that. I just want to make sure that the policy is clear on saying that so that we can follow through on that.
So basically a reorder of what this policy talks about. So potentially 5.7 being the first one, 5.4 following it.
Just to me, within 5.1, it just puts that first order of these funds will annually be determined by council as to what will be distributed or available for the tobacco reduction group or whatever. And you know what I'm saying.
We'll take care of it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around. So we have potentially how many stores coming up in our community? 10? 6, 8, 5? How many applications are there?
2 for Saskatchewan is what's approved currently, and I believe the last I had, and you can correct me, I believe it was about 8 applicants that are making their way through the Alberta process.
So that's correct. So we had 2 applicants on the Saskatchewan side that we're aware of, and there's the 8 at this point, we're not sure who's going to be successful or not, so really dependent upon who's
Fair enough.
successful.
For the sake of numbers, so we approved the licensing fee of $1,500. So we're looking at $15,000 per year for all tenure in the loop. So I guess I would suggest if we're looking at the first, maybe even setting up a 5-year rotation on this, or within the first 5 years of the city of priority to address immediate capital concerns or support of the implementation of its policing policy, and after the 6th year, then open it up in some way where, yes, we now have 5 units, we've covered the cost of them and whatever some of the affiliated costs are in there, and make the balance available. But I just think, again, if we spent a fair amount of time talking about recouping some of the costs for the city. And if this is the opportunity to do it, we've actually listed it in whatever the number it is back down there for policing costs, et cetera, then let's build the formula in somewhere where it says the first 5 years the city will take. If you want to take just the cost of the machine per year as a starting place, or some number that is going to reflect that there is at least some tangible dollars going from these dollars collected to actually making a difference with the capital we're going to cost.
We absolutely will look at how that goes over and do that.
But I would say 5 years, the cost of the machine per year, and then after that, you guys have that in terms of prevention or whatever the other programs are.
Look at our police bill. It's only going to go up. Like, we got to pay those bills. Give it away for all kinds of things. It's fine, but we got hard costs to pay. And we got big costs. We got big issues ahead of us. We all know that. So I guess I agreed to all this as one member council because I thought this is where the funds were going, like 1.5.1 or whatever, public safety. I referred to that as policing and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was my understanding as well. And when you take a look at the numbers now, the $40,000, I mean, we're going to be paying that for the first 3 years, and that's just for the equipment, not to include any training or anything. So, yeah, I think Councillor Diachek's right on track. They're just keeping it real simple in those first 5 or 6 years, whatever it may be, to totally cover those initial costs, because we're not going to receive anything from the provincial government until 2021, and that might be if we're lucky. So, this is just a small pittance, but at least it does cover those costs, and I think the taxpayers would be happy that those dollars are going towards it.
I think we've given the direction to the administration.
We have some direction, and we'll bring that back to the October GPC with some adjustments to it.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much, Dan. Moving on to item 6.4, the draft traffic bylaw. That's the city manager through the city clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Today I'm going to present to the committee the draft traffic bylaw for review and direction. The bylaw received its first reading March 26, 2018. The administration has held 2 enforcements in April of 2018 as well. Last week at the council meeting, council saw the traffic bylaw and rejected it back to administration to deal with some of their concerns. I will move just past the trailers for this piece, and we'll deal with that item last because I know the council had some concerns over it. So section 12.2 was one of the concerns in that tracking of earth or sand and gravel on the roadway. So upon review of this section specifically applies to construction equipment when crossing roadways, and there's been some clarity added to that section. Damage caused to roadways by unhitched trailers was another concern the council brought forward, and we've addressed that concern in section 11.2. Trailers hanging or blocking sidewalks, we've also looked at that and addressed it in section 8.3.9. And the playground zone, specifically the hospital ball diamonds, administration is going to conduct a review of all the playground zones. And will determine how to best address the concerns relating to seasonal sports fields. Further, we've also added a transitional clause in section 19 relating to the changes proposed for the school zones and playground zones that we would suggest would be in effect on January 1st. This clause is currently with our legal department to ensure that its language is correct. And then, Wendy, if you can put up those maps of the speed zones. In this particular item, council had addressed some concerns and wanted to make sure some clarity on the Highway 17 north. If council can see the 70-kilometer zone begins, thank you, Wendy, at the 1.83 kilometer mark from 17th and 44, and continues on an additional 300 meters past 67th Street. Sorry. We believe that this provides a slow-down zone for traffic coming into the city and makes that intersection that much safer. And hopes that addresses council's concerns in that area. The next item that was brought forward by our engineering team was the area on 44th Street between 40th Avenue and 37th. Council will note that the 70 zone there, or sorry, the 60 zone there moves to 80, just past the 40th Street intersection. We've extended that to include further past the new construction areas because we felt with that new construction slowing traffic down once again would provide people an opportunity to enter and exit that roadway in a safe manner. And we feel that once they get past that area and it's just past the last roadway that comes on to 44th Street, Highway 16, then the roadway would continue up to 80 kilometers an hour on past the underpass. Now, on council's favorite topic, if I could draw council's attention to the final 2 pages of the presentation. Administration has gone through and done some traffic bylaw comparisons and statistics. And while we have adjusted the bylaw in section in the sections to deal with the ability to park trailers on the roadway, we still stand by that we do not feel that's an appropriate behavior. If administration is concerned about the concerns about parking unhitched trailers on the roadway, that not all trailers are insured if they are unhitched. If we're concerned about the availability of on-street parking, sightlines for drivers and pedestrians, interference with traffic flow and access, and the potential safety concern arising from the lack of an independent braking system on trailers, as well as the unsightliness of public roadways as they're being used for trailer storage. Despite the concerns above, there is no liability or mandate for council to prohibit the parking of trailers, unhitched trailers on the roadway. Council does have the options once they make that determination to prohibit trailers, to allow trailers that are, if they're properly insured and the wheels are blocked, or to allow the unfettered parking of trailers for up to 72 hours. Administration did go and look at at some other communities, Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, Lethbridge, Spruce Grove, Fort Saskatchewan, Leduc, Vermilion, Prince Albert, Moose Jaw, Saskatoon, Regina, and North Battleford. And overwhelmingly, most of those communities do prohibit the parking of trailers on the roadway, with the exception of Prince Albert, who prohibit it, but provide to do so with a permit. Moose Jaw allows for the parking on a roadway, as well as Saskatoon allows recreational trailers to park on the roadway, as long as they are blocked. Unhitched trailers are not permitted. And Regina permitted subject to varied time limits. I also look at trailer parking complaints for 2017 and year-to-date 2018. You see about 67 and 50 is what the community has provided. And back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, City Clerk. Questions or comments, Councilor Buckley?
So, let's talk trailer show. 48 hours is what was originally there before these switches happened. Now we're moving it back to 72. Is that what we're proposing in this now? Yes?
Correct. We had, I think originally the bylaw had been 72. I think the 48 had come from the previous bylaw. So we haven't proposed a change at that time. But if the option 2, we say if it's blocked and unhitched, as long as it's insured, we're proposing a 48-hour time.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, I'm good with 48 hours. I was thinking if we moved it to 72, that's 3 days, and then we're getting close to the weekend, and people are gonna try and run it and go 5 days and just leave on Friday. So I'm good with 2 days as a guy who parks his trailer on the street for 2 days at a time sometimes. So I'll just put that out there. I'm one of those guys. Right? Doesn't have to hurt. As far as, I made some notes on the playground areas, and I just want to try and read this the way I kind of wrote it out here. I'm happy with the playground zones the way they are. It's said in there that ball diamonds are going to be looked at on 36th Street. So what does that mean?
Currently, within the bylaw, we don't identify the exact playground zones as well as the school zones. So once we determine if there's a change, and we can either create a barrier that would allow that zone to be a seasonal zone or allow the free flow of traffic without endangering its participants or traffic as it goes through, then administration would look and see how that could be accomplished.
And then I was driving around last week looking at a few things specifically around schools and playgrounds around schools. Noticing that pretty much every one of them's got a 6-foot chain fence right up to the road on the playgrounds in schools. So my question then becomes, is it really worth it for us to have a 365-day zone on those overall? 100% they got to be in there from June to September, or June to, from September to June, I guess. And that's all good. I just wondered if having those 365 days a year for school zones and those playgrounds within those school zones at all, I'm not sure I'm behind that 100%.
I suppose my response to that could be that if you build it, they will come. If there's a slide, the children will come there. That's the idea behind the playground zones, and the K-9 especially. Once again, as part of that playground review, we can look at the fencing around those areas and determine whether the egress can be changed so that it can prevent children from going on the roadway. But once again, if you build it, they will come, and they use it 365 days a year.
Yeah, I say I'm all school zones for 365 days of the year. I'm not so certain about that part of it. I'm good with it for school year. I'm not sure for July and August if they need to be there with the fencing that's around those school zones. Because I think that was my understanding, is that we were putting that in 365 because there's playgrounds in those school zones, even though they're not in school. And then I looked and saw these 6-foot chain link fences all the way around it. So tried to hit up a few members of the public around that conversation this week too, and got a lot of that comment back as well. So I just wanted to bring those forward.
Thank you, Council.
Councilman Rowe?
I guess my comment with the playground zones is that if you're doing something day after day after day, it becomes a habit. If you have a spell of 2 months that you don't have to go into that time, go into the reduce your speed, it just makes it so then, getting back into the habit come September, where people are just cautious 365 days of the year. It's going to be safer for our children, it's going to be safer for our residents, it's just all around a good practice. In terms of the trailer being unhitched, I think it's good to stay mainstream with the rest of the provinces and have it populated.
Councilor Baker?
Your Worship, I failed to ask about this when we first brought this up. How do we get to the public? Every community in Alberta and Saskatchewan, I think, have their own laws, traffic bylaws and what have you. They're not a universal law. It is when it's at 60 miles an hour or 60 kilometers. How do people know about all this stuff? I know we got a committee or a department that puts this information out there. But do we really think somebody's going to read 40 pages of stuff about how to drive a car in the city? Like, I worry about that. The documents get so long, and maybe they're all needed, but who knows what's in the law? You got tourists come to town. How do they know, if not at all, what's in our 30 or 40 page traffic bylaw? It's no different than you go to Sherwood Park or somewhere else. You watch for some signs and you hope you're doing okay. That's about it. But I just wondered how we're going to communicate this whole package if at all.
Well, for sort of the school zone signs, as was discussed at a previous meeting, because we are changing the signs, or changing the zones to longer hours, and now we would be required by law to post those signs and post the hours of the playground zones and the school zones, which is a way to communicate. I would argue that the basic operation of a motor vehicle is not changed as a result of this bylaw. I think that this bylaw provides some local flavor, and somebody who's from outside the community or is unaware of the bylaw has many options. They can either look at the bylaw online, they can approach our local public safety manager, or in the case of our peace officers and bylaw team, they usually, if somebody is confused about something, spend the time to explain it. But the laws themselves are pretty basic. You can't park, you have to park within a certain distance, handicap parking, those type of things don't change the community.
So this is pretty universal.
This is, most of the rules in there are fairly universal. When you get down to the nitty gritty, when you're determining school zone times and things like that, those are a community's determination. But once again, we communicate those by posting the signs if they're different than what the provincial laws are.
And I can compliment the city clerk and the team at our protective services team with the bylaw and peace officers. I've had a chance to spend time with them as mayor, and certainly they don't arrive with a textbook in hand. There's a discussion, information is shared between our residents, and
common sense.
Very common sense, Councillor. I was very proud to travel with them for that afternoon that I did, and we were out on some calls, and it was campers parked on the street, parked cords and all sorts of things. We covered off a whole bunch of various bylaw type items, and it was very informative to watch our staff inform the residents of the information, and by all means, and simply said, can you deal with it in essence immediately? And the gentleman said yes in one particular case with the campers. So it was a good information sharing for myself as well as seeing them do their job. But the residents were very positive because they did not fully know that law, and I can appreciate what you're saying, but I think at the same token, our staff approaches it unless, as they would, they approach it and say, are you aware there is a problem? How can we resolve it? And that was the approach that was taken, and I was glad to see that, certainly from our perspective, because the laws that we're creating here are not to collect. We're not in the collection business, and we're not trying to print new money. I hope people realize that we don't do things for fun.
It's not a cash cow.
It's not a cash cow, absolutely. But at the same token, without some sort of mechanism in place for those that do want to push the law, that's where we have the fines and things like that. But I can truly say, after being with the staff, I was very, very genuinely impressed with the actions that were taken.
The speeding and those are different things.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Councilor Rowan, and Councilor Sturgeon.
I just want to reiterate what the whole bylaw, in my honest opinion, is that I pride ourselves on being a safe community, and I think every point in this entire document isn't necessarily about convenience, because being the safest way isn't always the most convenient for the residents of our community, but it is the safest. And being overcautious, I think, is a better idea and a better route to take than being undercautious and having that room for error where accidents can happen, whether the chances of that are high or not. So just, again, it's not the most convenient route in all of these things. It's not convenient for you to have to pull your trailer off the road. It's not necessarily convenient to have to slow down 365 days a year, but it's the safest way to operate our community, and if people get in the habits of doing these things, then it just becomes routine for them. So.
Yeah, just a question about legal liability. So that if we have the bylaw and someone's trailer is on the road, no blocks, uninsured, and there's an accident, because we haven't enforced the bylaw, and I'm assuming the guys left it there for longer than the 72 hours or perhaps even 2 weeks, is there a liability on our part as a city for not enforcing this bylaw?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So I'm assuming there's an accident and somehow this trailer has moved or shifted and it hasn't been on the blocks and it's not insured, it is unhitched, and somehow causes an accident of some sort or an individual is injured. So maybe they have up on the hitch too high and suddenly it shifts and moves off and somebody gets knocked down and hurt. And we've been aware because the neighbors complained, but it's been there for 5 days. Is there any liability to us as a city because we haven't taken care of this issue?
I think liability is a very slippery slope. If we're aware of a situation and we haven't taken action to remedy that situation, that may change. What our due diligence or liability may be. But if we're unaware of a situation, can't.
Yeah, no, that's why I add the point in that we are aware, because I guess the challenge is then is that, you know, how much time will we have to be putting into our police force and peace officers to patrol some of these violence relative to this? So if no one calls it, are we looking for, you know, violations of this bylaw? And so that's the piece that's sort of, you know, in the back of my head. And yes, I agree with everything you're saying, Councilman Rowan. But I guess when we're driving, police officers are driving, and I'm speeding in the school zone, it's easy pickings. I see it. But I'm also, if I'm, you know, have other laws that I see broken, am I going to be worried about the trailer hitch or unhitched in those pieces yet? We as a city are really responsible for enforcing those bylaws. So I'm trying to figure out what's the easiest for us to enforce. And so as you make this rule, and then what creates the least liability for us in terms of our ability to enforce it as well. But I mean, ultimately, I still think, again, you know, I'm not sure how big a headache some of these expectations we have in here. I don't think just anybody would want to see anybody get hurt because the trailer obstructed the view. I don't think there's anybody in here that would want a trailer that was unblocked and too high on the hitch that moved and shifted, and someone's like, there's nobody who wants to do that. But by the same token, everybody still doesn't do things perfectly correct. And as a result of that, we have laws and bylaws. So it's kind of it's a catch-22, because we spent a lot of time, and I really appreciate the effort and the research gone into this, and I'm going, it can't be this complicated. It shouldn't be this complicated.
And I don't believe it is, Councillor. I think that if you look at, despite what our concerns are, our legal counsel has advised us that we have no liabilities or mandate to make a decision one way or the other. However, it's not always about whether it's your mandate or not to make a decision. It's how you best deal with your community and the community issues that arise as a result of allowing or not allowing something.
Councillor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, for the most part, everything in this bylaw, I totally think that they're good updates and that, you know, they're doing the right kind of deterrence, and there's very few things that I would change. The only one that I just really believe, you know, there's several neighborhoods in our city that are just not equipped for someone to not be able to have their trailer unhitched for some period of time. What that right period of time, sure, it's debatable, but there's neighborhoods in our city that are not equipped for it. They just aren't. There's too many big driveways with 3-car capabilities where you're going to be in front of someone else's driveway violating a different bylaw and you have your truck hitched or something. So I just don't believe that it's, or the setback, your driveway is not long enough to back in where you're not hanging over the sidewalk. I just don't think that it's possible. And this isn't necessarily a criticism, it's just the way we have used a condensed platform to put all of our lots on. And the different pie-shaped lots and the curves, and makes it nice and fun to live on. But if you can't park a trailer there unhitched anywhere near your house and you can't back it on, are you not allowed to have a trailer now? Is it just not an option for your family because, well, that would be against the law and you're risking having. So unless we go to some sort of permitting process where in very specific circumstances you can do it with a proper permit, which I'm not against, I think there needs to be some level of acceptance, whether that's 24 hours, 48, 72 might be stretching it. I just think there needs to be something. Whether it's the right number, I just think 0 is the wrong number.
And I would caution against going through a permitting process because the administrative nightmare that would create would take our public safety team's focus on public safety and focus on creating permits.
Sure.
I understand what you're saying completely. The person does need to unload and that sort of thing. At the same time, though, I'm wondering where are these areas that you're talking about? Because I do live in a cul-de-sac, and I went home after the last meeting. 7 trailers are parked in people's driveways. My driveway has a boat in it, 1 motorhome, 1 huge 5th wheel, and not 1 person was parked on the road. So I want to know where these areas are that you are referring to, because I don't know, honestly.
Well, pull up a map.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying.
Lakeside, College Park, Parkview,
So why is there
all
an-
over the place.
Yeah, I think anywhere you're finding homes that are starter homes with no garage. They have a little 14-foot easement to drive onto the side to park their vehicles. Right in front of Holy Rosary, there's a guy who has a boat parked in front. There are other trailers parked in front. So it's not limited. They just don't have the space.
Yeah, as houses have got bigger, even though some lots have and some haven't, I think that purchases and RVs have got bigger. It's just reflective of the campsites, because some campsites you can find will fit a 12, 14, 16, 18, you know, and then all of a sudden we went to Provincial Park in North Battleford, and there are only certain sites that they can drive one of those self-propelled motorhomes through. If you have a 35-foot fifth wheel, you'll find that there's X number of sites. So I think what's happened is over time, as the recreational vehicles have got bigger, it's got challenging for people. And, it's a point well taken. Councilor Buckingham, I'll let you have the floor next to you.
Thank you, Roger. The other thing that I've been thinking about since the very first time we discussed this is efficiency. I don't want my bylaw officers placing trailers on roads all day. I just don't. I want them in school zones. I want them protecting people. You know, and the occasional trailer sitting there for 48 hours. Is it a bit of a safety concern? Sure, maybe. But the biggest part of it is I want them doing other things. We can make bylaws all day long. Until you're going to enforce them and actually spend the proper time enforcing them, what are you doing? And where do I want them? And the whole discussion about trailers at all, kind of, in my opinion, is not where I want my bylaw officers focusing. They should be doing things that are going to be serving the public safety more so than watching for against trailers.
Your worship, if you buy a home with a 25-foot driveway, and then you go and buy a 35-foot motorhome, you got to find somewhere else to park it. It's that simple. You don't buy a 36-inch fridge to fit in a 30-inch hole in your kitchen cupboards. You also buy a motorhome, and if you park on the street, it's supposed to be at our trailer or your car 3 feet or a meter from someone else's driveway. Yeah, I'm not sure that's enough, but that's the way the law is. At the end of the day, if you have that size of a motorhome, you got to find somewhere else to park it. You just can't. It's 45-foot trailers, industrial trailers, and tractors parked in residential areas. I don't see that really covered in here, but we got oil field tractors parked on residential driveways in this city, and we haven't really addressed it. That's okay until they start the motor at 5 a.m. and the guy next door is sucking diesel in through his intake here, his furnace. So, you know, there's all sorts of issues. But at the end of the day is you can't have equipment that's too big for your site. It's that simple.
Councilor Monroe.
And just another comment that I don't expect our bylaw officers to be out there 24/7 policing all these bylaws. It's common sense as a resident of our community, if you know about these bylaws and you're aware of them, to follow them. They don't have to be driving down every road to hunt down unhitched trailers or drive and make sure every dog or cat is licensed. That's not what I'm saying. If the bylaws are in place, just like your dog or cat needs to be licensed, it's there, and you hope that you would be following these bylaws in our community. It's not that I'm saying I need one full time to go and make sure all these bylaws are taken care of. No, but it's just another law that you need to be following. Are the RCMP watching you 24/7 the speed you go in every single zone in our community? No, but if they do catch you, you know in your head that you're not supposed to be speeding. It's common sense. So common sense would be to follow these bylaws. If you're breaking the bylaws, then you're going to get fined if you so happen to get caught. But no, they don't go out looking for you. In my honest opinion, is that just RCMP, they're not out looking for people for crime. But if they see you doing it, then they're going to apprehend you or fine you or do whatever you need to do. But I think the more bylaws you have in place, it doesn't necessarily make things more finicky or more unsafe. It makes things safer because you generally are going to be more cautious about your actions and what you should be doing, in my opinion.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Richard. A lot of what Stephanie had to say, I really agree with there in terms of, this bylaw as a whole promotes every individual's ability to have quiet enjoyment of public spaces. So you're able to access a handicap spot, if you will, or you're able to see what's going on. Like, yes, it's for safety, but it's also for eyesores. It's very similar to our standards bylaw that we did, or that we were looking at not long ago. You know, this is just part of an individual's ability to enjoy public spaces, including roadways. And I think it's good overall. And one other question I had was just around, I wanted to confirm, around playground and school zones. We're going to update all the signage theoretically if we were to change that, so that it would be clear which times start to end.
That's correct, Councillor. We're required, once we go outside the provincial norms, to put those, post those signs. It helps it helps the operators of the vehicles know that school zone times or playground zone times are
okay.
And we expect that if the bylaw does pass and council does agree with those times, that we would be able to have those signage in place by January.
I have one final question from my perspective. The recommended speed zones that we discussed earlier before we got into trailers and things, is that, do we have the ability to actually enforce those, or is that got to go to the Department of Highways because they're both involving provincial highways? So I just wanted to make sure that even though we're talking about a recommendation, do we have to wait for, Thank you, Terry, for joining us.
That's a good pertinent question. We just heard back, actually late last week, that the ministry has made the changes to the Gazette, the official Gazette. So their side of things, they are in place to mirror exactly what we have in our traffic bylaw.
In our proposed traffic bylaw?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, proposed, yeah,
okay.
Sorry, yeah.
All right. So then, basically, it's waiting for city council to take the next step to make whatever proposal.
And then installation of the signs and the signs and stuff, yes.
So outside, and that's what he's saying, I understand, Councillor, is if it's gazetted, they understand exactly to mile marker 3.56, it's in Gazette saying that's, well, we would do it in consultation with the Department of Highways, because they'd be responsible for putting the 100-kilometer marker out on their side, correct?
Yeah, there is some work, cooperative work still to go forward once everything's in place.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to be clear. Thank you very much, Terry, for answering that. From a general consensus, as we are a committee, is the traffic bylaw ready to come forward?
You betcha.
My suggestion would be that administration could bring it back with more than one option in terms of one or two. Take a step. We'll adjust it on the fly. Honestly, I think that's the only way we're at a standstill on this. Otherwise, we're going to have to bring this back to GPC at our next meeting.
So if I can paraphrase you, looking for when we bring back, and specifically for within the trailers, we're looking for a motion with two options within there the council can either move forward on or not.
My opinion would be to bring back an option where prohibited and an option where not prohibited with X time length of unhitched trailers, because I think that's the sticking point for a lot of people here.
24, I might be able to.
Councillor Buckner,
what's the procedural?
We're in the procedural, to answer your question, Councillor Breakers. Administration is looking for some direction so that it comes back that this bylaw has a potential to potentially pass rather than be defeated and sent back again through the bill. So we're trying to find some common ground that people feel comfortable with.
You can make amendments, I think.
We can. There certainly can be amendments, but that's where we're at, just looking for some common ground. Councillor Buckingham?
Yeah, I was going to agree with Councillor Thorson there that the 0 to 48 type idea, or one of those two options, right, for those someone, I think is probably good.
We'll see.
We'll see.
So just a point of clarification, if I may. If trailers are uninsured, can they legally be on the road or parked on the road?
Your question is if they're uninsured, can they legally be on the road?
Yes.
I'll ask our general manager of public safety too.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. When we say insured, most people would have fire, theft, those kinds of things, vandalism insurance on their trailers. What they don't have is liability insurance. Liability insurance comes from the power unit or the towing vehicle. Once you unhitch, you've still got fire, theft, vandalism, but if someone runs into the back of that, that's that trailer going down the road. Yes, the vehicle that hit it will be responsible, but what precautions have been taken on the part of the trailer owner to prevent it from riding up on the sidewalk, onto someone's lawn? Those are the issues that we look at when we talk about safety. To answer the simple insurance question, the trailer by itself, unless you've obtained a specific rider from your insurance company, doesn't have liability insurance. That's from the power unit.
Also, but we're not being real specific then in our bylaw, because we're just saying it's uninsured. So should we be specific enough to say that it does not have liability insurance?
Well,
does that change this bylaw, because just based on what you're saying?
Maybe I'll come into this is unhitched. I think that's the easiest way to cut this, is what I'm hearing, I believe from administration, is if it's unhitched, it's a safety hazard. Is that kind of a liability hazard?
Amongst the other things that we listed, the safety hazard is one of them. But most people, when they're given that option by their insurance company, when it's attached to my vehicle, I have liability insurance from the power unit. Will I spend that extra amount of money for liability insurance when it's unattached? That's a personal decision.
Does that answer your question, Liz?
Well, no, yeah, absolutely does, but I'm just saying, based on what I'm hearing, is what we're suggesting, that the type of insurance we want in is liability insurance. Because that's the only difference, because if you're getting a license plate, you need to have, does it have to have some level of insurance for you to plate on it?
Not a trailer plate.
Like even a motorhome, you don't need it?
You can purchase your trailer outright and not have any additional insurance on it. If it's stolen, you just don't get paid for it. Okay.
I just want some clarification on that one. I know Dan and I talked about it outside of chambers for some clarification, that my trailer as it sits on the street right now, if it were, with my truck being here, is insured, does have liability. But Alberta wasn't that way. There was a difference between the two provinces. That's what I found out last week. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So yeah, so I have it on the Saskatchewan side, but here we are, border city, two sides of the street.
Challenges. Councillor Buckingham. Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Through to our city clerk. Under the Highway Traffic Act, any vehicle that's on a highway or roadway is supposed to be insured. That's the law. I got a 2-axle utility trailer and it's insured. Just a question.
So the difficulty with that is the trailer, when it's unhitched, is not considered a vehicle. Motor vehicle. So the Traffic Safety Act and the use of highway rules of the road is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a little lacking in that area. It's not as prescriptive as it could be when it dealing with trailers.
It doesn't say that trailers have to have insurance. What it does say is that you can't operate or have on a roadway any motor vehicle that is not insured. That's what the Traffic Safety Act says. Trailers are not motor vehicles.
So there's a bit of a gray area there.
I bought a trailer, and when I asked what I needed to buy for, it was just basically it was a truck box converted into with the hitch, so I could haul wood or whatever I wanted. I didn't even have to have any insurance for buying plate to haul stuff around.
It's registered though.
It's registered, yes.
So I do think that the administration does have enough information. Not off council's debate, but I do believe we do understand council's question, and we can probably get something and bring it back to you. The question would be, would you like it to a GPC or are you prepared to have us bring it back to a council?
I can't take
coffee.
Let's get her done.
I think we're ready to take it next. Thank you. At this time, there's inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are inquiries for yourself, Mayor Holmes, as well as Councilor Dykstra.
I'll look to council for motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
Seconder. Councilor Thorson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Get going down.